Chapter 620. Lu Baishui frowned suspiciously. He didn't know why Li Yunxin suddenly talked about good people. He wasn't young and naive. In fact, because of his special background, he knew that there were almost no good people in this world. Almost everyone did things for the sake of profit. Even those who preach about benevolence, righteousness, and morality, and seem to practice what they preach might not have the opportunity to do evil. So he gave up thinking about what was good and bad, and just did things. He was like this. His brother Li didn't hesitate to kill people, and he was a demon. Did he really believe in good and bad? He was confused and couldn't understand. Just like how he couldn't understand what was the deeper meaning behind, he is prettier than me, and I am uglier than him. He heard Li Yunxin say, the second type are ordinary people. Ordinary people and good people don't look very different. But ordinary people will do evil when they have the chance. But if they don't have the chance, they won't create the chance to do evil. There are many of these people in the mortal world. But in the cultivation world, in the demon world, and even among the mortals I have met, they are rare. He added a few more strokes on the scroll, and glanced at Panhe. The third type are bad people. For example, this woman. She's like ordinary people usually. But the difference is that ordinary people have the chance to do evil, and they know their limits. One person found a shop door open, and ran in to steal a few things. But they know their limits, and they don't dare to hire more people and empty the whole shop. But this woman can do great things and do great evil. So she is a very, very bad person. Panhe shrank back. She glanced at Wu Jiasong, and then quickly looked away. Lu Baishui didn't know what he meant by this. But at this point he still smiled faintly and said, shouldn't the third type be evil? Bad people? Li Yunxin smiled. In my world, how can they be considered bad people? Real bad people don't treat people as people. They only treat them like plants. And they don't feel guilty when using them. This woman was still far from being an evil person. That person is the real villain. After saying this, he pointed at Xiesheng. There are many people like him. Cultivators and fiendish demons were mostly of the fourth type. I don't like any of them. Lu Baishui thought for a moment. Then which one am I? You're somewhere between the first and the second. Li Yunxin narrowed his eyes and looked at him. People like you are hard to come by in my world. You've lied to me the first time and the second time. So much so that I can't bear to kill you to vent my anger. Thinking, there are so many bastards in the world, and the world is dark and gloomy. People like you and old Lu are the only light I can see. It would be a pity to kill you. Although I'm also a bastard, I'm also a person who loves beauty. Even if you aren't a good person, who wouldn't like a good person? Lu Baishui was silent about this evaluation. When he met Li Yunxin for the first time, his evaluation of Li Yunxin was probably the first type. A rare, talented, and gentle person. But later, he found that his appearance began to change, and it became more and more beyond his imagination. At this moment, Lu Baishui didn't know how to evaluate him. He was a fiendish demon, and a fiendish demon among fiendish demons. It was hard to comment on the standard of using people. Now he talked about the difference between good and evil, and said that he was a good person. What did he want to do? Just because he was a good person, he wouldn't make things difficult for him, right? But just as this thought came to his mind, he heard Li Yunxin say, I realized this when I saw this bastard and this evil person together tonight. I really can't bear to kill you. It's like when I'm admiring flowers and my hand is pricked by thorns, but I can't bear to crush the flowers. So we're fine. I believe what you said. When we arrive at Aquarius Bay, I'll go see where you met Shui Yu, and see what kind of people she needs, and then I won't bother you anymore. Lu Baishui frowned. You? He wanted to ask. Is this true? But he also felt that if he asked, it would be rude to Brother Li, and also to himself. He was prepared to die, in the worst-case scenario. But now, the clouds suddenly parted, and the moon brightened up, which made him a little helpless. So he was stunned for a while, and then said, Brother Li, you're so broad-minded. Li Yunxin laughed. You saved yourself. If you are the second or third kind of person, originally, I planned to care about your life and death when we reached the sea. So, you see, evil people are annoying. Speaking of this, he pointed at Xiesheng. You're an annoying evil person. Damn it. Previously, I kept you alive and coaxed you not to force yourself, because I thought I could get more information by secretly observing you. But now, first of all, I understand one thing. Second of all, you and I have been exposed. Li Yunqin's expression became cold. So I don't have the mood to play with you anymore. 3 questions. First, what kind of world do you come from? Second, what secrets do you have? Third, what kind of person is a celestial being? After saying these, I'll let you die a quick death. Because of this finger, Xiesheng could move freely. But now that he had some cultivation, he knew better than Lu Baishui how strong this person in front of him was. Not to mention anything else, just the pill he used to save that man just now. Compared to the pill he used to treat Pan He's injuries and dug out of her mouth, it was like the world's top delicacy was rotten food in the mud. This thing, he used it to save a mortal. Xiesheng slowly moved his body, aware of a strong sense of crisis. He calmed himself down and let out a sigh. You really are not one of us. So who are you? He had reason to believe that one of us was protecting him. Maybe he would have to wait for the real crisis to appear. Or maybe he would need time to come. So he wanted to delay as much time as possible. After the enemy succeeded, it was usually effective to induce him to reveal his identity and purpose. It was not unreasonable for villains to like to talk a lot. Ordinary people would like to show off when they bought a new affordable product, not to mention a victory that was a matter of life and death. Li Yunqin said softly, Me? I was once mistaken for you by your people. I suffered for you, and also enjoyed a blessing for you. But in the end, I found you before your people. If you are still asking me questions after the count of 3, you will die miserably. Now let me say it. When he said these words, he did not avoid the 3 people on the deck, and his hands did not stop. But it seemed that his creation had hit a bottleneck, and his pen moved slowly. And from time to time, he looked up at Xiesheng, as if he wanted to look at him carefully. If Xiesheng knew painting, he should be terrified now. Because Li Yunqin was carefully observing the flow of his qi, his appearance, and his form. Xiesheng was shocked. If what Li Yunqin said was true, it meant that he might really fall into this guy's hands now. And the help he thought before was gone. He wanted to save himself. Between momentum and power, he barely had the former. Realizing this, he no longer maintained a cautious and humble attitude, and also laid his cards on the table. I see. Good. So from the time you met me, I have always been in your plan. So the little monster protection you said before was also misled by you? Xiesheng said as he looked at Li Yunqin's expression. The latter did not hide his pride or affirmation, so Xiesheng immediately got the answer. He smiled and shook his head, pacing 2 steps. Since you can ask me where I come from, then you are not from our world. But you should know a little about us. I will tell you one thing. My world is far more powerful than you can imagine. You people are trapped on the ground and the sea, and you feel free to fly in the sky. But in my world, we travel the universe and break the void. You should have a general idea of what I said. You can threaten me, but if I die, someone else will come, Xiesheng said calmly. I advise you not to be my enemy. Li Yunqin thought for a moment. This reaction made Xiesheng feel a little relieved. So he wanted to change his tone and say something else. To give this person a way out, temporarily get over this disaster. And then, but he saw Li Yunqin smile. Travel the universe and break the void. You want to say, you can travel the universe? Xiesheng was stunned. Lu Baishui and Pan He were also stunned. But the 2 of them did not know what travel the universe meant, and Xiesheng was confused because, how could he say these words? If he knew these words, why did he ask where he came from? If what you said is true, it is indeed more powerful than my world. But you didn't answer my question. You have one last chance to answer my 3 questions honestly. Now I will say 2. Xiesheng frowned in surprise. Are you crazy? Since you are not from here, you should know that this place can be destroyed at any time. What I know is the only way to save you. How dare you threaten me now? Destroyed at any time? Li Yunqin tilted his head and thought for a moment. Fresh, do you mean at any time? Or a few thousand years later? At most 100,000 years. Xiesheng stared at him. Oh, Maybe we don't have the same definition of the word at any time. At least a few thousand years. That's enough for me to live freely. Li Yunxin thought for a moment. So now you still want to hide it from me? I will say 3. Xie Sheng was even more surprised. You, even if it's 1,000 years. Are you willing to stay here? It's not like you haven't seen the outside world. Can you endure here? Li Yunxin sighed and interrupted him. Why not? For me, my life in this world, at least for now, is the real life, my friend. As he said, he put down his pen, took out a scroll from his sleeve, and unfolded it on the table. Chapter 621. The 3 mortals didn't dare to look at the painting on the table. However, Xie Sheng could look at it. It was a long scroll. On it, there were some childish images drawn on it, and there were also names marked on top of their heads. If he didn't see it wrongly, the name of the scroll should be, Visiting the Zoo on a Sunny Morning. Then, Li Yunxin frowned slightly, and gestured with her fingers on the drawings one by one, as if she was trying to find the one she wanted. She muttered without rhyme or reason, I know you. You're the same as me. You have a different background, so you naturally have a sense of superiority. You should be the center of your life. In your eyes, you are the main character of this world. Of course, what's worse is that this is the truth. You hid in the mountains for so many years, and every misfortune turned into a blessing. Even now, you are still growing. You are so talented. And you reached the emptiness realm in just 10 days. Ha! I still have many plans for the future. Even now, I am still thinking about what to do and what to do next. It's hard to feel hopeless, and I don't believe what will happen to me. At this point, Li Yunxin's finger stopped on the painting and pointed. Found it. Mermaid sex. Good. That's it. Then, he raised his head and looked at Xie Sheng, whose brows were tightly furrowed, as if he was still trying to guess what Li Yunxin wanted to do, and what tricks she was going to use to deal with him. Now I will say 3. He knocked on the scroll with his finger. A gust of demonic wind suddenly rose from the table. A huge body quickly formed in the demonic wind. It looked like a 3-meter-tall strong man. Its upper body was that of a human, and its lower body was that of a fish. However, it only looked like it. Its face was ferocious and dirty, as if its skin had been peeled off and was covered with slimy mucus. Its body was also covered with mucus, but there was also something else that seemed out of place, barnacles. Barnacles were recognized by people who lived by the sea. Small, sharp-edged things that were thickly spread over the rocks and under the bottom of the ship. If someone accidentally brushed against the rocks covered with barnacles, their skin would be torn open. Now the body and tail of the segmented mermaid were covered in this stuff. They were densely packed like the scales of dragons. However, the scariest part was where the human body and the fish tail met. There was actually a long, protruding crevice in what looked like a person's crotch. As soon as the beast appeared, Li Yunxin drew a circle in the air and restrained it. It rolled and howled in the circle, as if it was suffering great torture. Then, the crack beneath him suddenly opened, and out popped a giant object the size of an adult's arm. In the end, it was a non-human beast. Even that thing was covered in barnacles, barely concealing the bulging veins on it, so it wasn't too shameful. Li Yunxin had suddenly released such a monster. For a moment, no one knew what he was going to do. With a flick of his finger, another golden core shot into the strange beast's mouth. Instantly, a deafening shriek numbed everyone's eardrums. The monster's body expanded even more after receiving the elixir's power. With bright light shooting out from its eyes, it stared at Pan He on the deck and stuck out its stinky red tongue, wanting to grab her in its arms and squeeze her dry. Pan He had been ravaged by Xie Sheng before, and the scene was still vivid in her mind. Now, seeing the thing on the strange beast that was as thick as her thigh, she was so frightened that she even forgot to cry. However, Li Yunxin only snorted coldly. He waved his hand. The invisible barrier that was trapping the strange beast suddenly expanded, trapping Xie Sheng within it. Even though Xie Sheng didn't know what Li Yunxin was going to do, he knew that this horrifying strange beast wasn't a good one. Golden light flashed in his hand, and 12 light swords appeared around him. While flying to the side, he shouted at Li Yunxin. "What are you doing? You dare to kill me? You're seeking death. Idiot. However, the merman wasn't interested in Xiesheng at this moment. His horrifying face was pressed against the seal. His thick and hideous arms were about to tear the seal apart as he pounced on Pan He. One of the fish's tails was flapping loudly, and the giant creature was also swaying wildly behind the restrictive spell. It was so frightening that one felt like their liver was going to explode. Li Yunqin ignored it. Instead, he looked at Lu Baishui, who was dumbfounded. Brother Lu, this thing is called a merman. It's said to be a strange beast that lives in the sea. Have you seen it before? How could Lu Baishui say anything? He just shook his head subconsciously. Li Yunqin picked up the brush again and waved his finger at Wu Jiasong, making him tilt his head so that he could see Xiesheng. While continuing to draw, he said, "It's said that this thing is lascivious." Lascivious? Of course, it wants to lascivious the opposite sex first. But if there is no opposite sex, it's okay for a man to do it. Because this thing doesn't eat seafood and needs to collect yang and yin essence to live. If it yells at me rudely like this, it will notice it soon. At that time. Ha ha ha. Hearing this, Xiesheng's hatred was about to burst. He raised his voice and yelled at Li Yunqin. Idiot! Do you know what it means if you kill me? No one will know in 1,000 years. But Li Yunqin smiled at Lu Baishui. Brother Lu, listen to this. A man shouldn't think too highly of himself. He acts like the world will be destroyed without him. Don't you hate him? Saying this, the merman stopped roaring at Pan He. This kind of strange beast was naturally sensitive to spiritual power, and it knew that the barrier in front of it was not something it could break. It suddenly turned around and stared at Xiesheng. Xiesheng was startled and flicked his fingers. 4 flying swords shot out with a buzzing sound. The strange beast didn't dodge, but took the 4 swords. Not even a scratch was left on it. Instead, the golden swords turned into spots of light. This could only mean there was a huge gap between them. Seeing this, Xiesheng was stunned. Knowing that there was no other way, he finally yelled, "Fine. I'll talk. Take it first, I'll talk." Li Yunqin finally turned around and looked at him. After 2 breaths of time, when the merman was close to him, he sighed. "If you were so smart, why did you come?" Xiesheng heaved a sigh of relief. "Get it out of here." But Li Yunqin laughed. "But it's too late. As you all know, I'm an honest man." His face turned cold. "Enjoy the feeling of being used as a tool." Before Xiesheng could say anything, the merman's huge body suddenly pounced over and hugged him. A spot of light suddenly appeared in his arms, which was the golden swords protecting Xiesheng were all broken. Screams sounded. Li Yunqin flicked his fingers, and the barrier disappeared. The merman suddenly turned around, holding Xiesheng tightly and falling into the water. The screams suddenly stopped, and only the sound of water splashing could be heard. The force was so strong that even the huge ship seemed to be swaying rhythmically. After 3 or 4 breaths of time, a large amount of red blood appeared on the surface of the sea. The onlookers were dumbfounded. Li Yunqin, however, frowned. Useless stuff. He hooked the merman with his free hand. The merman's huge body was like a fish on a hook, and it was pulled up by an invisible force, tossing and turning continuously. They also saw that the strange beast was holding a human figure tightly in its arms. The reason why it was a human figure was because the skin on its head was torn, and the flesh was exposed. Especially in its mouth, there was a bloody hole. At this moment, it wasn't its mouth that was injured, but its lower body. The lower body roared angrily, because it was pulled out of the water, and it moved vigorously. Every time it moved, a large amount of flesh and blood would splatter. Even Lu Baishui frowned and looked away. However, one person didn't turn his head. Instead, he stared at the merman, and the light in his eyes seemed to be even brighter than the merman's. It was Wu Jiasong. Xiesheng had reached the emptiness realm, but he still had the strength to speak. "You don't do well." The merman seemed to hate people talking. As soon as it heard him speak, it immediately turned the body in its hand and struck it hard. With a paw sound, brains splattered everywhere. It actually pierced through the head of an emptiness realm cultivator. Chapter 622. It was as if she had seen through his thoughts. Li Yunqin looked at him and smiled. "Yes, looks like we can't even be friends anymore." He added a few more strokes to the paper, and his expression became slightly emotional. He sighed. Ai. Lu Baishui hesitated for a while when he saw how depressed he was. In the end he said, "Perhaps one day you and I." Li Yunqin raised his hand to interrupt him. He shook his head and smiled. "Brother Lu, you misunderstood. I'm just lamenting. The feeling of having great power and being able to control the fate of others is really great. I'm almost addicted to this feeling." Lu Baishui was speechless and sighed. Li Yunqin tilted his head and looked at him. "What are your plans for the future? I know you're going to Aquarius Bay. Brother, it's your responsibility. All I can do for you, a good man, is to give you 10 days of time. Within 10 days, if the East Sea doesn't stir up any waves, I'll give you time to leave. What happens after that?" Lu Baishui shook his head. "Let's leave it to fate." Li Yunqin snorted and glanced at Xiesheng's body from the corner of his eyes. "There is no such thing as God's will in this world. You'd better plan carefully. As a person, you will be very tired in the coming period of time. How about, are you interested in becoming a demon? A cultivator?" Lu Baishui said. "No." Li Yunqin raised his eyebrows in surprise. "I thought you would consider it." Lu Baishui smiled and said, "If I have a fortuitous encounter, or if I am interested in cultivation, maybe I will. But not now. Just because I was afraid of living a hard life, I gave up my human body and became a monster or a cultivator. Then I wouldn't be Lu Baishui." Li Yunqin sighed. "What I want to give you is real longevity. Well, I never force people. I'll show you the way. If he didn't want to stay in Donghai, he could go to you. Don't you know Blackblade heroing? Now that the hero has become the emperor, he should be able to allow you to hide your identity and be Lu Baishui. I still have something to take care of, Brother Lu, please." As he spoke, he raised his hand. Before Lu Baishui could refuse, a gust of demonic wind swept him far away. Lu Baishui stood still at the stern of the ship and looked over for a while. But his face could not be seen clearly in the darkness, and he finally lifted his foot and walked slowly away. When Li Yunqin was talking to him, one of his hands was on his unfinished painting. When Lu Baishui was not there, he moved his hand away. Under his hand was a small human figure on the painting. Between those strange circles and lines, Xiesheng's conscious soul was imprisoned on the paper. Li Yunqin thought for a moment and picked up his pen again. Next to the little figure that represented Xiesheng, there was another lifelike figure. That was a segmented shark. Then he rolled up the incomplete spirit map. Then he put away the table. But then it softened, and she put her hands on Wu Jiasong's back and grabbed his clothes tightly. Although this man was completely different from the previous Wu Jiasong, she still felt that she could feel the familiar warmth. After such a terrible night and such a terrible disappointment, in this cold wind and rain, she finally felt the uneasy warmth. This warmth was like a huge hammer hitting her heart, and she realized she almost missed something. She used to walk too fast and run too fast. She was so anxious that she didn't have time to stop and think about it. If one day she stood at the peak of power, what would she want in the end? Would it be the untouchable power, or the dazzling but cold wealth? Neither of these could bring her warmth and comfort in this cold wind and rain. He started to cry again. Wu Jiasong sighed again and patted her back gently, squeezing out some indistinct words from her throat. "Don't cry," he said softly. "What can we do? I know you did those things involuntarily. Alas." He rubbed his face on Panhee's wet hair. "Alas. I didn't know you before, and I didn't know how scared you were every day. But now it's all over. What can we do? Alas, let's live a good life. You and I still have many years. Let's talk things out. See how I can help you. I'll help you leave that hall. Let's continue to do business and make money, and have a son, okay?" Panhee was still crying, but their clothes were soaked by the waves, so they were not afraid of being soaked by Panhee's tears again. She cried for a while, and Wu Jiasong comforted her softly and patted her as if he was comforting a sad child. Okay. If you don't want to tell me, I won't ask. In the future, just pretend that I never knew these things. Don't cry. The wind is so strong, and just now you. Be careful." Panhee sucked in a deep breath, trying to stop her crying. But she didn't succeed. So she clenched her teeth, clutched Wu Jiasong's clothes, and breathed as if she was suffocating. and finally calmed herself down a little. I'll tell you. I'll tell you. Jasung. Her eyes were red and swollen, and she hugged him tightly while sobbing. We were in Baishan Road. My hall is in Baishan Road, in Sujia village. Panhee began to pour out her heart. These things had been hidden in her heart for too long, like a flood. But it was blocked by the dam built by things called hope, ambition, confidence, and so on. But now that the dam had collapsed, the flood had filled her heart, and she was almost out of breath. She wanted to pour out her heart, and maybe she didn't want to disappoint Wu Jiasong again at the end of the night. He was not the Wu Jiasong of the past. This not only meant that he had such a body, but also meant that in Panhee's eyes, she saw things that she hadn't noticed before: tolerance, gentleness, and consideration. She decided not to disappoint him anymore, and wanted to grasp the light in the midst of despair. Thus, the pouring out of her heart lasted for almost an hour. The two hugged each other on the deck, in the wind, and even forgot the cold, until a glimmer of light appeared on the horizon. The long night was finally coming to an end, and the light was coming. Panhee stopped talking, and leaned her head on Wu Jiasong's shoulder. She said everything, the things that woke her up from nightmares and many nights. She had never felt so relaxed and transparent. She had no secrets in her heart, so she had enough space to embrace the world and the man in her arms. The two hugged each other in silence for a while, and their clothes were dry. Panhee saw a warm light on the horizon. She knew it was the morning sun. She finally felt a little happy because of the light. So she rubbed her face on Wu Jiasong's shoulder again. Jiasong, do you know? Now I understand better. I'm not suitable for those things. We girls were bought by the Freemasons, trained, learned how to please people, learned how to please men and women. Even among the girls like me, I'm not the smartest one. Then you bought me, and I followed you. I used to think I had no chance to make a name for myself in the Freemasons. But after all these years, almost all the girls who were sent to Jianghu with me died. Those who were stupider than me died, and those who were smarter than me also died. But I'm by your side, because you saved my life, ha! Everything I have today, everything I have in the Freemasons, was actually given by you. Now I'm giving them all back for you, and I don't feel sad. I just feel stupid. Alas. Panhee rubbed Wu Jiasong's shoulder gently. We always knew that the Donghai Kingdom's manager of Mu Nanju was in Xiazheng. But we've been living in Xiazheng for all these years. I've never found him. Alas. It's always been my worry. Now forget it. Jiasong, I beg you one thing. Panhee wanted to look at Wu Jiasong's face. But Wu Jiasong hugged her gently, and she didn't continue to get up. Instead, she continued, let's go back to the land, and leave Xiazheng. I want to spend the rest of my life with you. But I'm afraid the people of Mu Nanju won't let me go. Wu Jiasong was silent for a while. Then he hugged her tightly. Panhee felt the man's warmth again. She knew that Wu Jiasong was telling her in this way that he agreed. She knew that Wu Jiasong wasn't a person who liked to show his feelings. But she never doubted his feelings. His feelings were as strong as his hug at this moment. He hugged her tighter and tighter. His two arms tightly wrapped around Panhee's thin back, as if he wanted to embed her into his body. Panhee began to feel a little suffocated. She rubbed Wu Jiasong's ear. Jiasong, however, she immediately felt an even greater power interrupting her words and forcing her to swallow her breath. A trace of fear and palpitation suddenly flashed through Panhee's consciousness. Her eyes suddenly widened as she realized something. But a stronger force came. This was definitely not a power that a mortal, even a mortal who had a perfect body because of the Jindan, should have. This kind of power could only belong to someone who had been immersed in martial arts for a long time, with vigorous internal energy. Before she heard the sound of her sternum breaking, Panhee finally heard Wu Jiasong whisper in her ear. Now you've found me. The morning light quickly disappeared in front of her eyes. Wu Jiasong said in a deep voice, in the name of the Dragon King, I dare not. Li Yunqin still did not raise his head. He gave a non-committal grunt. After a while he said casually, well, have you vented your anger? I will never be able to repay Dragon King's kindness in this lifetime. Wu Jiasong slowly raised his hand and bowed deeply to the ground. Thank you, Dragon King, For killing Xiesheng for me. Haha, killing. That's a good word. As for kindness, there are many ways to repay it. It just depends on whether you want to or not. Li Yunqin smiled and shook his head. He glanced at him. Where's Panhe? Dead. Dead. Li Yunqin responded and continued to focus on his painting. The room was silent for a while. Wu Jiasong let out a light breath. According to Panhe, the Freemasons' base she knows is in Ding County's Sioux Clan gathering under Baishan Road. There's a quarry 3 li away from the Sioux Clan gathering. The nest is there. That's not an ordinary gathering place for the outer members of the Freemasons. There's a new elder overseeing it. Recently, the new elder of the Freemasons has been preaching there. He's preaching the teachings of Daotong and Kenzo. He doesn't refuse anyone, saying he wants to inherit the orthodox Taoism. But at the same time, he's doing other secretive things. Panhe doesn't know much, but it's related to grenades, gunpowder, and the flying dragon spear. Panhe knows of another 24 such bases. But there should be more. I'll draw a map later and present it to Dragon King. After saying this, he put his hands down and fell silent. Li Yunqin added 2 final strokes to the painting and placed the brush in the air. He grabbed at the side and pulled out a white cloth. He slowly wiped his hands and paced around the room. He looked at Wu Jiasong. Great shopkeeper Wu. I killed someone that both the Freemasons and Mu Nanju wanted for you. But you only gave me this little information. The strength of your gratitude, TSK, isn't enough. Wu Jiasong shook his head slightly. Dragon King must be joking. How can a person like me let Dragon King kill people to vent his anger? If Dragon King wants to kill people, he'll naturally kill them. I'm not telling Dragon King these things to repay his kindness. I know that my life is in the hands of Dragon King, and I'm on the vast sea. Dragon King can help me be reborn, or he can seize my soul and scatter it to get what he wants. I'm only telling you this to save my life. Li Yunqin stopped in front of him. He looked him up and down for a while and finally laughed. You people from Mu Nanju, although your style of doing things is annoying, it's true that you're smart. You're much better than those idiots from the Freemasons. Then continue. Who is the master of Mu Nanju? I'll ask this question only once. When he said this with a smile, it reminded Wu Jiasong of what he said to Xiesheng. I'll say 1. I'll say 2. I'll say 3. Even more unforgettable was the scene of Xiesheng being brutally tortured to death. Wu Jiasong only hesitated for a moment. He said, as far as I know, the master of Mu Nanju is also called Taoist Clearwater. His other identity is the reincarnation of the art saint. Li Yunqin paused for a moment then smiled. I thought you'd ask me to spend some effort. Smart man. But the reincarnation of the art saint. Li Yunqin looked at him. Is it the art saint or the reincarnation of the art saint? There was a big difference between the two. The art saint was naturally that art saint. But if he was reincarnated, after a person reincarnated, his temperament, and even his gender could change drastically. He would no longer be that person, but a completely new person. If he was really the reincarnation of the art saint, he would certainly have a way to keep many things from the past. But just look at Yu Meng. He still remembered that he was the sword saint, and could subdue the glazed sword heart of his previous life. But he was no longer the calm and tranquil saint of the past. He even wanted to live in seclusion with his beauty under such circumstances. As far as I know, it's a reincarnation, Wu Jiasong said. Li Yunqin nodded and slowly walked away, dropping the handkerchief with which he wiped his hands. The white handkerchief disappeared into the void. The rest, Wu Jiasong said. I can't. Li Yunqin gently raised his hand to interrupt him. Forget it. I don't need you to say anything else. I just wanted to confirm my guess. If you say too much, you will die when you go back. Wu Jiasong was stunned. Li Yunqin seemed to be able to see his expression. You're not a beauty. Why should I bring you with me? I wanted to kill Xiesheng. Well, I wanted to let you vent your anger. I wanted to see if you knew how to repay a favor, and if you could help me get some information from Panhe. But you did it. I admire you. So you still have to go back alive. Go tell the owner of Southern Wood House. At this point, Li Yunqin walked back to the painting suspended in the void and pointed at it with his finger. I've painted Xiesheng's spirit into this painting. His memory and will are all preserved. But he glanced at the painting and laughed. There's also a mermaid in this painting. He died quickly at night. It only took a moment. Now that he can't die, he has to experience everything with a clear mind. He has to experience it for as long as I want him to. But this guy's mouth is harder than I thought. He didn't say anything for 2 to 4 hours, but he was going crazy. I had to help him repaint it when his spirit was about to collapse, so he could continue to experience it. You know, this kind of thing is very troublesome. Li Yunxin spread his hands. So I hope you can tell your art saint. In this way, I may be able to find out what I want to know, but I may not. If she doesn't want me to know anything, she'd better come to see me and tell me in person before Xiesheng's spirit collapses. Oh, Li Yunxin raised a finger and shook it. Don't be a clone. I want the real body. Wu Jiasong had been very calm since he entered the cabin. This kind of calmness was not clear whether it was calmness or a dead heart. But now that he heard that Li Yunxin was going to let him go, his expression finally loosened. He subconsciously looked at the painting, but as soon as he touched it, he quickly looked away. Dragon King. After hesitating for a long time, he said, "If Dragon King wants me to go, to pass the message, I still have a few questions to ask Dragon King. Otherwise it's hard to say." Oh, Li Yunxin raised an eyebrow. You want to ask me why I didn't directly destroy Xiesheng's spirit and get what I want to know? Wu Jiasong was stunned again. Dragon King's foresight is like a god. It seems that you are also knowledgeable. Li Yunxin shook his head. Okay, tell your master this. I was previously involved in this matter, and it took me a lot of effort to get away. Now that I have found a backer like Shinryu, I really want to stay out of it and live a carefree life. But we all know this is impossible. I have caused a lot of trouble, and it's hard to wash it off. Now that I have Xiesheng, he is actually a good target. Everyone's attention will be shifted to him, and I can get away. So why should I kill him, keep his spirit in my hands, and hold a big trouble? Wu Jiasong waited for him to continue, but the room was quiet again. After the time it took to drink a cup of tea, Li Yunxin said again, "Why?" Wu Jiasong looked up blankly, but he found that Li Yunxin was not asking him. Instead, he looked out of the window, but his eyes were not focused. His head drooped down again. Chapter 624. After a dozen breaths, he heard Li Yunxin say, "Tell this to your master." Wu Jiasong frowned. "Dragon King, which ones?" "My exact words." Li Yunxin pursed his lips. "Don't ask any more." Wu Jiasong could only say, "Yes." Then he heard Li Yunxin's voice become excited. "Good. Now that we are done, tell me about you and Pan He. For example, how did you two get on the ship? How did you find out her true identity? And how do you feel about it?" This was the 4th time Wu Jiasong was stunned. This time, he was stunned because he realized that Li Yunxin was just as the rumors said, unpredictable. It was hard to know when he would be happy, and when he would turn against him. Sometimes he would talk about sages, and sometimes he would do some despicable and dangerous things. A moment ago, he looked indifferent like a hermit, but the next moment, he suddenly cared about his family. Such a person was scary, and hard to guess. Although Tsing Yanming would not take his life, Wu Jiasong still felt a slight chill. At the same time, he was glad that he immediately told Li Yunxin everything. It was a wise choice. So he thought for a while and said in a low voice, "Things may be different from what Dragon King thinks. This time, I really didn't come for Dragon King. To see what she wants to do." Li Yunxin waved his hand. "Tell me from the beginning. Don't go back in time. Like how you met." Wu Jiasong didn't know if Li Yunxin's sudden interest had other purposes, so he didn't know what to hide and what not to hide. Considering Xiesheng's previous experience, he could only sigh. Yes. The Freemasonry once domesticated some women in the East Sea Kingdom for infiltration, because they wanted to control the power of the human world like us. Their purpose was to send them everywhere as eyes and ears. But Dragon King knew that our power in the human world was formed much earlier than the Freemasonry. As soon as they started doing this, we knew. That's why those women were later bought. Actually, they were bought by our people. They didn't know. Li Yunxin laughed and said, "Wonderful. I like that kind of thing. Wu Jiasong wasn't careless because of his momentary happiness. He said cautiously, "What we're thinking is that if we keep the Freemason spies right under our noses, it'll be hard for them to guess. It was more convenient for observation and tracking." Pan He said that her sisters were all dead. In fact, they were all killed because they gradually realized that there was something wrong with the people around them. At the mention of Pan He, Wu Jiasong's voice paused. But his tone was still very calm. Li Yunxin laughed. She never noticed. So he's really an idiot? Wu Jiasong shook his head slightly. That's because we thought that if we cast a wide net, we would only get some superficial information. Thus, they decided to groom a high-ranking official. Pan He was chosen. Therefore, those women were all killed. And some people who posed further obstacles to her were eliminated. Finally, she was made the ruler of Donghai. Li Yunxin laughed again. In the end, you found out last night that you gave your wife to someone else. Wu Jiasong was silent for a while. She's done what she did last night many times before. This time, it was Li Yunxin's turn to be silent for a while. Wow. Wu Jiasong coughed softly. Li Yunxin shook his head. Ha. It's really not easy for you to be the manager. It's really painful to treat her as your wife and see her seducing others with her body. Wu Jiasong said in a low voice. But if she's just a spy, I think she's a spy who has feelings for me. It's not unbearable. Li Yunxin nodded. Then this time? This time, she has no feelings for me. Wu Jiasong took a deep breath. Then, I don't have to have feelings for her. Tisk tsk. You guys love and hate each other. Li Yunxin looked at Wu Jiasong's expression with interest. And then? Continue. Wu Jiasong moved his feet slightly. Soon he suppressed his previous emotions. This time, the Freemasonry got the news first. The news came in a hurry. She and I were in Whitewater Town. And she suddenly said she wanted to go to the East Sea Chain. I didn't have time to spread the news, so I could only follow her on the ship and act according to the situation. I didn't know until I got on the ship that she was following Xiesheng this time. Dragon King should know how important Xiesheng is. I can decide other things by myself. But about Xiesheng, I could only follow her and wait and see. Wu Jiasong let out a sigh. This is the beginning and the end of the matter. Oh! Li Yunxin drawled and nodded. He looked him up and down again, and suddenly asked, But Pan, he always thought you were an ordinary person. How strong are your martial arts to be able to hide around her for so long? Wu Jiasong's voice sank. I'm sorry to make Dragon King laugh. All the martial arts in the world are originally derived from shallow Taoism. Therefore, when martial arts are cultivated to the peak, they will slowly enter the Taoism through martial arts. I'm not talented, but I can be considered to have entered the Taoism through martial arts. Li Yunxin nodded with understanding. Then I'll tell you one thing. You'd better not be the shopkeeper of the East Sea Kingdom. He looked at Wu Jiasong, who frowned slightly in surprise. It's a good thing to enter the Taoism through martial arts. But I heard that people like you from Southwood House can mix in the streets because you are ordinary people. But you, do you know how I saw through you? Your internal force has slowly transformed into spiritual force. But you don't have snow mountain or ocean of chi in your body. If one day the spiritual force in your body is full to a certain extent, you will explode. To use the term, it's qigong deviation. So now in the eyes of people like me, you are like a flame in the dark. You have been lucky these years, and haven't met the Freemasonry people who know how to cultivate. Otherwise you would have been seen through. Wu Jiasong was stunned. Li Yunxin smiled slightly. So it's hard for you to be a shopkeeper. This time, you lost your real prince. Do you want to jump ship and work for me? Wu Jiasong's expression turned serious. Dragon King, don't say such things again. My master has given me a new life. I am. Humph. Li Yunxin snorted. Look at your body now. I'm the one who gave you a new life. Didn't you feel good selling your master just now? Wu Jiasong said no more. He was afraid of angering the Dragon King in front of him. He looked down at the floor for a while, and then heard Li Yunxin take a few steps forward. Let's talk about the Dragon King on the sea. Since you are the shopkeeper of the East Sea Kingdom, you must know what the Dragon Sun on the sea is. Wu Jiasong still didn't hesitate. He only thought for a while, as if he was organizing his words. Then he said, replying to the Dragon King, I don't know much about the Dragon King on the sea, but I have heard a rumor. But this rumor has no basis. I don't really believe it. Dragon King, forgive me for speaking nonsense, I will say it now. Li Yunxin glared at him. Don't be long-winded. Yes. Wu Jiasong slightly lowered his voice. There is a rumor that the dragon son on the sea is indeed the son of Shinryu, and he was born by the ancestral dragon. The ancestral dragon. This is the rumor that even I find hard to believe. It says that before Shinryu was born, there was actually the ancestral dragon. Shinryu was born by the ancestral dragon. The Dragon King is the dragon son who was infected by Shinryu on land. And the Dragon King on the sea is the dragon son, who was infected by the ancestral dragon on the sea. Li Yunxin frowned. After thinking for a while he muttered something. But Wu Jiasong couldn't hear what he was talking about. Who did you hear this from? It was a coincidence. Wu Jiasong frowned and thought for a while. It was a few years ago. I was still young then. I heard this rumor. Before that, none of my ancestors had heard of it. They only said that someone died, but came back to life. They said that his soul was taken by the king of hell, and went to the underworld to meet the judge. The judge said that his life wasn't meant to end, and that he should enjoy wealth, so he came back to life. That person said that he met the ancestral dragon in the underworld. The ancestral dragon gave him immortal arts, and asked him to return to the world. Then he did some divination. Later on, there was a famine in that area, and that person was hot-headed, and led his people to rebel. He said that the ancestral dragon told him to return to the world and enjoy wealth, and that he must become the emperor. Just like that, there were more people gathered and the rumor spread, but it was quickly destroyed, and that person died. Li Yunxin listened quietly and looked at him. You think he made it up? Wu Jiasong was stunned. I've never heard of it before. But there is indeed the dragon son of the sea. Li Yunxin smiled. What you told me is the rumor you heard. Let me guess. So you didn't say anything about the Dragon King of the Sea in Nanmaju. So you were afraid that I would be angry. So you quickly made up such a rumor to make up for it? Wu Jiasong's expression changed slightly. Dragon King, I just told you what I know. That's strange. You're the manager of the East Sea Kingdom, and you have many eyes and ears. But you've never heard of the origin of the Dragon King of the Sea. Li Yunxin looked at him. Don't you think it's strange? We don't have to know everything, and we have to investigate everything. After all, we have our own responsibilities. Li Yunxin waved his hand and shook his head. I'm afraid the owner of Nanmaju doesn't want you to know. Never mind, when she comes, I'll ask her myself. Hearing this, Wu Jiasong wanted to say something but hesitated. After hesitating for a long time, when Li Yunxin walked back to the painting he said, Dragon King, my master. I'm afraid her realm is higher than Dragon King's. Dragon King is still. Li Yunxin turned his head. He stared at him expressionlessly. Wu Jiasong hurriedly shut his mouth, feeling a little numb. After 3 long breaths, he heard Li Yunxin say, So you think I called her here to find trouble with her, huh? Wu Jiasong didn't speak. He felt that he was standing on the edge of a volcano that could erupt at any time. But the volcano didn't erupt. Li Yunxin turned his face and waved his hand. Go. Get off the ship when you reach the chain of the East Sea. I'm busy torturing people to save people. I won't call you again, so don't bother me. Chapter 625. The huge ship was still sailing on the sea, about to reach the chain of the Eastern Sea. But at this point, it could only take the first step on the journey of thousands of miles. A person who wanted to go out for a walk walked out of his house. The ocean was so vast. Although it had sailed for more than 10 days, it was still very far away from the legendary Dragon Island, the border of the Eastern Sea, the boundary between the water and the weak water. 96. I lost 96 generals in a row. When he roared, the entire palace trembled slightly. People said, when you stamp your feet, the ground will tremble. This saying was used to describe him. When he roared, the entire space was indeed trembling, as if he was the embodiment of this space. The hall was dark, deep, and empty. There was only a dragon throne facing the south. The tall walls were decorated with murals. The style of the lines in the murals was also very special. Some lines were simple and sharp, as if they were pursuing a kind of power, concise beauty. But some lines were complex and gorgeous, as if they were pursuing another kind of indescribable beauty. These lines were mixed together to form a huge mural, showing an incomprehensible scene. The simple and sharp lines outlined many grand and majestic buildings, and the buildings were shrouded in clouds woven by complex and gorgeous lines, only revealing the eaves of the roof and the grand and tall bodies. In between these buildings, there were also flowers and grass, as well as all kinds of birds and beasts. The painter seemed to want to use the majesty of the tall buildings to form a sharp contrast with these gorgeous and agile beasts, to express some kind of strong feeling that was hard for people to understand now. But it should not have been successful. In many people's opinion, the painting was too full. Not only did it not show vitality, but because of the huge size and the darkness of the palace, it seemed to be full of pressure, making people feel depressed. But at this time, with the anger of the people in the palace, it complemented each other. I personally appeared and caught that demon. I told you to watch carefully, and now you tell me that he swallowed another 3. He stood on the high platform with the dragon throne and roared angrily. What do I need you for? Below the high platform, there was a group of officials lying on the ground. However, these officials all had different appearances. They were all tall, short, fat, and thin. There were some tall ones. As long as they stood up, they would touch the roof of the hall. It was a roof that could only be reached by a dozen people standing together. There was a big one that was as big as a hill, that filled up half of the hall. Every breath felt like a gust of wind. There were also some that were as small as the belly of a finger, and there were long strips that coiled all the way out of the hall. There were also some translucent wandering souls covered in seaweed, barnacles, and other parasites. It was hard to tell that they were humanoid. All these oddly shaped things lowered their heads in fear of the anger of the people on the stage, not daring to make a sound. The person on the stage, the Mr. Shuiyu, whom Li Yunxin had met on the deck of the Taowu, paced around angrily for another 2 steps before pointing at the group of people. General Jinlang, speak. What happened? The person called General Jinlang was a short and fat man who looked like a human, but his eyes were not on his face. Instead, they were on the top of his head. He hurriedly lowered his head even more, but his eyes were looking straight at the stage. Lord Donghai, please calm down. Lord Donghai, please calm down. After saying these 2 sentences in fear and trepidation, his tone changed. But I have no other choice. The guy that Lord Donghai captured is at the peak of the true state. He has several treasures. Lord Donghai asked me to give him a hard time. But as soon as I opened the door, that guy rushed over and swallowed 3 generals. If I didn't run fast, I wouldn't be able to reply here. Lord Donghai, even you can't take away his magic treasures, let alone us. Mr. Shuiyu, Lord Donghai, Dragon King of the Eastern Sea, widened his eyes. What? You haven't subdued him yet? What about now? Where is he now? General Jinlang said. Except for Lord Donghai, who can subdue him? He is still wandering in the prison. I have already ordered people to withdraw. I think he won't be able to break the inhibition of the water prison in a short time. Why didn't you say so earlier? Dragon King of the Eastern Sea raised his finger and pointed at him. You. After shouting a few times, he suddenly flicked his sleeve. Forget it. You guys. As he sighed, the demons in the hall seemed to be slightly relieved. They knew that the storm that came quickly this time also dispersed as quickly as usual. This Dragon King of the Eastern Sea sighed again. Then he pointed to the west side of the hall. Let's not talk about this first. General of 100 Transformations, go and invite Lady Mingyue here. When he said this, his tone was much calmer and not as angry as before. So as soon as he said this, there was immediately a cry in the hall. Lord Donghai, please spare my life. This cry could be said to be mournful and melancholy, lingering in the hall. But the voice itself seemed to be blown out by a flattened trumpet, extremely unpleasant to the ears. Looking at the General of 100 Transformations, He was a fair-skinned man with 4 arms. At this time, he stood up from the ground and was extremely terrified. Lord Donghai, last time she asked me to call Lady Mingyue, but I was cut off by Lady Mingyue. Yesterday, she asked me to go, and I was left with another arm. At this point, the color of his face changed. It was not an analogy, but it really changed from white to dark blue, as if he was extremely depressed. Lady Mingyue also said that if I call her Lady Mingyue again, she will cut off both my arms. If I bother her again, she will cut off my head. Now Lord Donghai asked me to call her Lady Mingyue, and also asked me to summon her. Won't I die? Lord Donghai, please spare my life. Why don't you ask General Jinlang to atone for his crime? This Lady Mingyue seemed to be a terrible and ruthless character. As soon as the General of 100 Transformations said this, General Jinlang immediately jumped up. Lord, I will go to the water prison and meet that Lord Tongtian again. Aya, why don't we ask General Kuhi to go? As soon as he said this, there were demons shouting again. In a short while, the hall turned from silence to noise, almost tearing the roof off the hall. Lord Donghai stared at the farce with his eyes wide open. He wanted to scold them several times, but he couldn't. It was as if even he knew how difficult Lady Mingyue was to deal with. He stood there for a while full of anger. Finally he snorted. Useless. All of you are useless. What's the use of you? I will go myself. With a flick of his sleeve he walked out angrily. Chapter 626. As soon as the Dragon King of the East Sea left the hall angrily, the noise in the hall stopped. Previously, the group of demon generals in the hall had pushed the blame to each other, and almost started cursing and fighting. At this point, however, the anger on all the strange faces had disappeared, and had been replaced by a strange and mysterious excitement. It was like the expression on Li Yunxin's face when he asked Wu Jiasong about his relationship with Pan, he on the ship far away. They stood up from the ground, and remained silent for a while. General Jinlang lowered his voice and said, Let's open. I'll be the banker today. I bet that the Lord will be scolded again. When he comes back, he will bet at least 3 treasures. The 100 Transformations General had previously pushed the fatal task to General Jinlang, but now he didn't have any grudges. He immediately shouted, Hey! No way! I see that the Lord and Lady Mingyue are getting better and better. I bet that he will be scolded again today, but he will be scolded. At this point, he smiled mischievously and looked around. Still so happy. He laughed loudly. Many of the demon generals in the hall laughed along with him. The atmosphere inside and outside the hall was full of joy. The 100 Transformations General stretched out his hand. Come, collect the money. When the demons greeted the Lord of the East Sea, they showed their true human forms. The appearance of the demons after they transformed into humans. This was to show their respect to the Lord, and not to hide their human forms. But now that Lord Donghai had left the hall, they all transformed into the size of ordinary people, and they still looked like normal people. If Li Yunxin, who had seen the world in Tongtian Swamp and Cloud Mountain, saw these demons now, he would be slightly surprised. This was because although the demons on the land had seen more mortals, they were still in strange shapes after turning into humans, and most of their faces were too horrible to look at. But now the appearance of the demons in the hall mostly resembled that of humans. In terms of appearance alone, there was no difference. The demons squeezed and squeezed. Some went to General Jinlong's side to bet, while others went to General Jinlong's side to bet. The wager was nothing else but copper coins. The polished copper coins were all cast by the various countries on the continent. Some were still in use today, while others had long since been abolished. But these demons seemed to treasure it very much. But they also had a lot of gold and silver on their clothes. So it was strange that they loved this thing. The 100 Transformations General used his 4 arms to collect the money. Since he couldn't hold on to them anymore, he shook his body and stretched out the 2 arms that had been chopped off to Lord Donghai. After the group of demons in the hall placed their bets, they called out to the outside of the hall. Immediately, a pointy but necklace little demon ran in. The colonel wasn't afraid to enter the hall. He smiled and stood at the door bowing. What orders do the generals have for me? This lowly one saw His Highness heading towards Lady Minuet's side just now. Should I call this lowly one? As he said this, he smiled mischievously, his gaze falling on the copper coins in the 100 transformations general's hands. The 100 transformations general casually tossed 2 to him. Why ask when you already know? Quickly go and take a look. Come back and report back to this general. The colonel reached out to receive it, bowed again, and ran away like a wisp of smoke. This group of extremely daring demon generals continued to shout and gamble in the hall for a while before someone finally talked about something else. The person who spoke had a yellow face and buck teeth, like a piece of rotten wood that had turned into a spirit. Originally, when the demons were bustling with noise, he was silent and seemed to be deeply worried. Now that the interest of the demons was slowly fading, he frowned and said with a bitter face, brothers, calm down and listen to me. After shouting like this 3 or 4 times, the hall slowly quieted down. But General Jinlong's face twitched and he kept winking at him. It was as if the 2 of them were hiding some secret, and he didn't want this person to say it. But the yellow-faced demon general ignored him, sighed twice, and raised his hands. Brothers, you seem to be happy here, but don't you know that a disaster is coming? This sounded very scary. But the demons were stunned at first, then they all booed him, and soon ignored him again. It seemed that this person often said this kind of thing, and everyone was already used to it. But the yellow-faced demon general still said to himself, this time it's true. General Jinlang and I heard that Lord Tongtian mentioned in the water prison that Goddess Penglai is coming back. As soon as he said this, the hall immediately quieted down. About 1/3 of the demon generals were stunned. The joyful expression on their faces disappeared, and was replaced by disbelief and surprise. But the surprise soon turned into fear. It was as if because of this sentence, the fear of a long time ago appeared in their minds again. The rest of them looked at each other, their faces very confused. They probably didn't know who Goddess Penglai was. But seeing the demon general's expressions, they also became confused and nervous. Seeing this scene, General Jinlang hurriedly said, General Mian, how can you say this? The yellow-faced demon general called General Mian side twice again. What do you mean by saying this? What did Lord Tongtian say when he came in? He said, you dare to catch me. Have you heard of Wei River Dragon King? He is coming to save me. Did you tell him that Wei River Dragon King would not be able to find Mount Penglai, even if he came to save you? General Jinlang frowned. Aya, that guy was talking nonsense. General Mian shook his head worriedly. If he was talking nonsense, how would he know about Goddess Penglai? Did he also say that Wei River Dragon King brought Goddess Penglai with him? So naturally he would know about your Mount Penglai? General Jinlang frowned and shook his head. Aya, what is there to worry about, Lord Donghai above? The yellow-faced demon general sighed heavily. This is what I am afraid of. Lord Donghai said angrily last night that he wanted to go to the sea to see who else was causing trouble. In the end, he lost his temper again just now and didn't bring anyone back. Think about it. Did he suffer a loss last night? This time General Jinlang didn't say anything. The other demons were even more dumbfounded. After a while, some people started to ask who Goddess Penglai was. When General Mian heard this, he walked to the front of the demons and stood still. He said with a bitter face, there are many brothers who don't know. Aya, if others don't want to talk about this kind of scary thing, then let me do it. Who told me to always be the bad guy? That Goddess Penglai is the previous owner of Mount Penglai. When General Mian said this, his tone was slightly lighter, but his tone was heavier. 1,000 years ago, before our Lord Donghai obtained this celestial mountain, we were all under her. At that time, Aya, we weren't as carefree and happy as we are now. That Goddess Penglai is vicious and merciless. Now that we work under Lord Donghai, if we do something wrong, we will only hear him scold once or twice. What's the use of having you? If it was in the past, we would have been skinned alive if we weren't careful. Aya, those of us who survived back then. Which one of us didn't live in fear and trepidation every day? His words seemed to have stirred up the fear in the hearts of the demon generals in the hall. General Jinlang saw that the atmosphere wasn't right and hurriedly said, General Mian, don't talk about these scary things. But a demon general who hadn't personally experienced the past, and thus didn't know the dangers, asked curiously, what happened after that? After that? After that? Aya. General Mian sighed and waved his hand as if waving something away. After that, that goddess Punglai, perhaps because she committed too many sins, was punished by the heavens and lost all her power. But everyone was afraid of her despotic power in the past, and didn't dare to resist. Finally, it was Lord Donghai. Lord Donghai discussed with us, and decided to expel that goddess Punglai from Mount Punglai. Thus, he risked his life on the Dragon Island, and obtained a fortuitous encounter and godly power, to force her to a corner of Mount Punglai. Do you still remember that there used to be a forbidden area in the west, where it was said that there was a ghost cave that led straight to the netherworld, and no one was allowed to go near it? When he said this, everyone nodded. Then someone cried out involuntarily. Could it be that? That's where that goddess Punglai stayed. She had a magic treasure there, and even Lord Donghai couldn't do anything to her, so he could only seal her there. Or 1 year ago, Madame Mingyue, someone else shouted. Madame Mingyue came on a boat and accidentally broke Lord Donghai's restriction, so he let her go, General Mian said with a crying face. Exactly. Since then, I've been saying that it's going to be bad, but no one listened to me. Now that things have come to us, it's useless if you don't tell me. That goddess Punglai must have gone out and found her divine sense, so she came back with 2 helpers. Our good days are coming to an end. It seemed that the monsters didn't know what he said, and heard from the 9th young master. Now that they knew, they all panicked. They didn't have time to gamble or place bets. There was an uneasy silence for a while, and then the hall exploded again. This group of monster generals began to decide what to do. But they didn't have many choices. They could either pray that goddess Punglai hadn't found her divine sense, or pray that Lord Donghai could take her down, or the worst-case scenario. If Lord Donghai was defeated, would goddess Punglai kill them all? If the demoness, who was sealed in Li Yunxin's sleeve, knew what was going on in the hall, she would be so proud that her tail would go up to the sky. Seeing that things had become like this, General Jin Lang was anxious. He rushed to General Mian's side, and pulled him to a corner, raising his eyebrows. Are you crazy? Lord said not to mention this matter. General Mian shook him off. You're the crazy one. Waiting for death. If it were up to me, we should quickly gather everyone. Lord is an undisciplined person. It'll be a few days before he makes a move. We should first go out to sea to check out the situation. That goddess Punglai has helpers. Let's first. He made a chopping motion with his hand. Clean it up. It can be considered as helping Lord share his burden, and also as beating down their arrogance. We're familiar with the East Sea. Otherwise, when they swarm to Punglai Island, would you rather fight a bloody battle with me or me? General Jin Lang opened his mouth. This is very important. Let's ask Lord first. General Mian angrily waved his hand. Lord is head over heels in love with that Madame Mingyue. He's no longer the Lord of the past. Wait for him. He looked like he was about to say something treacherous again. General Jin Lang hurriedly waved his hand. Okay, let me think about it. Chapter 627. The hall was in a state of chaos. Outside the other hall, it wasn't a comfortable scene either. Compared to the hall where Lord Donghai and the demon generals discuss matters, this palace was more like the style on land. It was built on a pillar, which stood on the east coast of Punglai Island, and was connected to the island by a slender arch bridge that looked like a rainbow. The area on the pillar was very wide. It could probably fit the entire Qing Kingdom's imperial palace on it. Rather than a pillar, it was more like a towering flat mountain. The top of the mountain was covered with colorful vegetation and surrounded by the glow of the palace. There were also several waterfalls falling from the edge of the cliff like jade, but this huge stone pillar was too tall. When the water fell near the sea, it all turned into mist. This was why the pillar floated on the sea of clouds all day long, like a fairyland. The palace was built in the middle. To the west, there was a square paved with white jade. There were cranes, colorful phoenixes, and divine turtles strolling in the square. There were children in colorful clothes chasing and playing. Lord Donghai stood on the square and looked into the hall. There were no doors or windows in the hall, only pillars and light muslin. However, it was dark inside the hall. It was as if there was an invisible force blocking the light outside, preventing people or things in the hall from being seen. Lord Donghai stared at the darkness for a long time before sighing. I didn't expect what you said to be true. Alas. But no one answered him. He put his hands behind his back and walked a few steps on the white jade tiles. You said at first that your son was the Dragon King of the land, but I didn't believe it. Alas, last night I saw him. He was really good. He broke one of my incarnations and sealed it. The Baihua general said he came to invite you twice and cut off his arm both times. No matter how he tried, he couldn't grow it back. Was the way he sealed my incarnation the same as what you did to the Baihua general? Not only did he cut it off, but he also sealed it? There was still no sound in the hall. The cranes in front of the hall and the children playing were originally very pleasant to listen to, but now Lord Donghai only felt annoyed. He frowned and waved his sleeve. Those red-crowned cranes, colorful phoenixes. Men and women immediately turned into pieces of paper and floated down from the sky. Thus, the world finally quieted down. Your son is going to fight his way to our door. Do you have the guts not to say anything? Humph, Lord of the Eastern Sea said angrily. I've been treating you with courtesy for the past year, and I didn't chop off the 100 Transformations General's arm. The person in the hall finally spoke. It was a pleasant female voice, but it was hard to tell her age. But just by listening to this voice, he felt that it belonged to a beautiful and quiet woman. Lord Donghai was taken aback. After a breath's time he frowned. This octopus. How dare you lie to me? Now that he's here, you're in big trouble. The female voice in the palace continued. It's not too late to regret now. Otherwise, when your immortal mountain and those demon generals are no longer yours, it will be too late to regret. Lord Donghai snorted disdainfully. Regret? Haha. When have I ever regretted anything? You think I'm afraid of him? He's just a kid. But I've heard that those who treat him as a kid don't end up well. The voice in the palace interrupted him. If you didn't treat him as a kid, he wouldn't have chopped off one of your avatars. Lord Donghai, the female voice paused. Why don't you let me go now and avoid this trouble? Lord Donghai's eyes widened. Don't even think about it. Humph. Back then However, he was interrupted once again. The female voice in the palace lowered a little. So, what does he look like now? Lord Donghai frowned. He said reluctantly, he has a good appearance and he looks like you. Humph. He doesn't speak pleasantly. The way he speaks is so annoying. He must be like that Li Chunfeng. The person in the palace sighed. But it didn't seem to be sadness, but something inexplicable. He doesn't look like Li Chunfeng. Li Chunfeng, he is also a gentle and elegant person. Lord Donghai pursed his lips. There was a breeze around them. But now, the breeze suddenly turned into a small whirlwind. With a buzz, the pieces of paper on the ground were swept away. Li Chunfeng. His voice turned cold, as if he was thinking of a great enemy. Humph. Don't let me meet him on the East Sea. No. Sooner or later I'll go to the land and catch him. I'll cut him into pieces. I'll avenge you. The person in the palace stopped talking. Lord Donghai gritted his teeth for a while. Seeing that he was ignored again, he quickly said, Fine. I won't mention that person. Let me ask you something else. My doppelganger has been destroyed and sealed by Li Yunxin. What is he trying to do? Who is more capable now, you or him? After a while, the person in the palace said, If I were you, I wouldn't ask me who is more capable. I was trapped here by you, but he was able to seal your clone. The result is self-evident. I have to advise you again. It's not too late to regret. Sigh. I don't like to see more disasters. Why do you want to get yourself into trouble? These words hit Lord Donghai's sore spot. Suddenly angry, he rode away on the demon wind without saying a word, knocking down a large number of trees by the cliff. After a while, he heard a voice from the sky. You haven't seen what I can do. The Lord of East Sea left the isolated island in a rage, only to run into the officer sent by the demon generals to gather information. The officer didn't expect his lord to come back so soon after meeting Madame Mingyue. He was caught sneakily lurking on the bridge. Halfway there, he didn't know if he should go forward or retreat. In a panic, he crouched on the ground and covered his head with his hands. But Lord Donghai only glanced at him and landed, yelling, "Where are they? Are they still in the palace?" He knew what the demon generals were up to, but he didn't care. This was exactly as General Mian had said. Their Jun Shang had an undisciplined temperament. Seeing that Lord Donghai wasn't angry, the officer immediately got up and said with a smile, "My lord, they are all in the palace." After saying this, he took 2 steps closer and said in a low voice, "I saw. General Jinlang will be scolded for holding you, but General Baihua will be happy to bring you back. My lord, in my opinion, it's better to let General Jinlang catch you." Lord Donghai glared at him. "How dare you? What use do you have for making trouble all day long?" The officer shivered and quickly hid behind Lord Donghai, walking quickly with him on the bridge. However, after a dozen steps, Lord Donghai stopped. The officer almost bumped into his shoulder. He hurriedly took 2 steps back, only to hear Lord Donghai say, "Forget it. Humph. You go back first, and tell them I am having a good chat with Madame Mingyue." Chapter 628. On hearing this, the captain sprang up, jumped off the bridge, and fell like a stone into the sea. Lord Donghai looked down and then back. In the dense and colorful flowers and trees, cranes chirped and children played again. He snorted. No one knew what he snorted, flicked his sleeves again, and rode a gust of wind to the north of the island. Looking at Mount Punglai from the sky, one would find that it was a relatively regular circle. The slopes were relatively gentle, with a long coast and snow-white beaches. Except for a tall stone pillar in the east, there were only sporadic short pillars protruding out of the sea on the other 4 sides. But the area above these short pillars was roughly the same as the area of Madame Mingyue's residence. There were also plants and buildings on some of them, which seemed to be inhabited. If he rose higher, he would find that Mount Punglai was shrouded in clouds and mist. This layer of clouds and mist was very thin. If he looked from the coast, he wouldn't feel that it was obstructed. But if he looked from the very far sea, he could only see a vast expanse of whiteness in the distance, and couldn't see the trace of the spirit mountain. But he wouldn't feel that there was something hiding in the distance, just that it didn't exist. Li Yunxin knew this kind of experience. It was very similar to the smog in his world when it was not so serious. But the fog around Mount Punglai was not fine dust but water mist. It took Lord Donghai a quarter of an hour to fly to one of the many short islands in the north. On the way, he paused slightly and slowed down. This was what he was used to doing. When he looked at the Mount Punglai that now belonged to him from the sky, he was like a lion patrolling his territory. This gave him a sense of belonging and power. Even compared with things like East Sea Dragon King and Mysterious Realm Monster, there was nothing more comforting and self-confident than owning an island. But maybe there was one. Something happened recently. That was Li Chunfeng. Madame Mingyue rarely mentioned this name. Everything he knew about Li Chunfeng came from the bits and pieces that Lady Mingyue had unwittingly let slip out of her mouth. Although there were few positive comments from those words, Lord Donghai still pieced together the man's image. He should have a good appearance. Even a beautiful lady like Madame Mingyue couldn't deny this fact. He should also have a good character. The Lord of the East Sea felt that he was the kind of person who was unrestrained and unrestrained, but also meticulous when he was gentle. He also had a decent cultivation base. That was a man. However, a man who had entered the profound realm after only a few hundred years of cultivation. However, he didn't look like a cultivator who had abandoned all emotions and desires. On the contrary, he looked like an ordinary mortal. But he had also caused Madame Mingyue's heart to break because of some kind of deception. This man made Lord Donghai feel uneasy, for he could not seem to find a single aspect in which he could outdo him and despise him. Therefore, this person also made Lord Donghai angry. He wanted to destroy him. However, it was probably difficult for him to meet Li Chunfeng. So this anger, mixed with other emotions, is projected on another. That person was now on the surface of the East Sea. With so many things on his mind, Lord Donghai landed on a small island in the north. This island was not connected to Punglai Island by a bridge, But there was no need to. The slender and beautiful long bridge, where Madame Mingyue lived, was built by Lord Donghai to make the island worthy of her identity. For this reason, he also set up a restriction around the island. Those who were below the true realm couldn't fly in the air, and could only walk on the bridge. But the person who lived on this island was not worthy of Lord Donghai's great efforts. In fact, for Lord Donghai, this person was like a slippery poisonous snake. It made people afraid, and instinctively want to stay away from it. But he had to hold it in his hand in order to hurt his enemy. This guest called himself Huang Guanzi, and claimed to be from the Freemasonry. Lord Donghai descended from the cloud. He saw Huang Guanzi was already standing in the courtyard of the bamboo house where he stayed, waiting for him with one hand behind his back. He looked like a thin man about 40 years old, with a wretched appearance, like a mouse that had gained enlightenment. However, he claimed to be a human, and liked to take care of the two sparse yellow mustaches on his upper lip. Huang Guanzi had the cultivation of the true realm. It was said that he used to be a cultivator of Daotong, who secretly attached himself to the Freemasonry. After the Battle of Yunshan, Xianmen collapsed, and he became a capable general of the new Freemasonry. This was what Huang Guanzi said. But Lord Donghai felt that his words were 70% true, based on his limited knowledge of the land, and some details revealed by Madame Mingyue. Seeing the big demon land, Huang Guanzi looked at him carefully and laughed. His laughter was sharp and slippery, like a weasel being strangled. Lord Donghai, did you go to see Madame Mingyue again? Hee. If you did as I said, you wouldn't have to be so distressed. Lord Donghai, do you understand now? The demon frowned and looked at him. After a moment of silence, he said, I still think Master's method is too risky. If I am not careful, I'm afraid I will lose everything. Huang Guanzi laughed again and gestured with his sleeve. Lord Donghai, please sit down. While speaking, he sat down on a stone bench in the courtyard, stroked his mustache and narrowed his eyes. Lord Donghai, things are happening now. It's not about whether you can do it or not, but it's already here. Lord Donghai said that in the past, the Shinryu strictly restrained you, Dragon Son, and didn't let you get involved in the affairs on the land. They also told you how vast the sea was, and how crowded and boring the land was, so that you really felt that the people on the land were all uncivilized barbarians, weak and unworthy of your attention. But these years, haven't you gradually learned about it yourself? Just from the information you got from those shipwrecked people, who occasionally drifted to the island, Lord Donghai should have understood how wonderful the land was. Now there is Madame Mingyue. Is there anyone like her on the sea? Lord Donghai has secretly gathered talents from the land to work for himself. But Lord Donghai, Huang Guanzi said earnestly, what's the use of this? Those coastal people, even if they have the so-called skilled craftsmen, they are nothing in Midland. Compared to Lord Donghai's Dragon Palace, the residence of a human emperor in Midland is more than 100 times more splendid. Lord Donghai can't really set foot on the land, and you can't know the wider world. Lord Donghai frowned and listened to him, then slowly sat down. In fact, Huang Guanzi had said this many times, and it was the truth. The Shinryu never liked to have contact with the things on the land. These years, the Shinryu didn't like to show up, and gradually learned about the people and things on the land. Lord Donghai was confused, but, seeing him like this, Huang Guanzi's expression changed, and his tone turned serious. He bowed to the devil and said, Lord Donghai, now, since you have talked to that Li Yunxin yesterday, I have to say something disrespectful. There are some treasonous words that I have no choice but to say. The devil frowned and said, What? Huang Guanzi said, Lord Donghai, forgive me first, then I dare to say it. The devil sighed and said, Why do you say this? What can't we talk about? I don't blame you, sir. Go ahead. Only then did Huang Guanzi sit up straight and stroke his mustache. But he already had a wretched appearance, so this made him look even more comical. He said, Lord Donghai met with Li Yunxin. You should know that Li Yunxin is an outstanding person. I don't want to be disrespectful, but he is not much weaker than Lord Donghai now. The devil's face darkened. He frowned and moved his lips, but in the end he didn't say anything. You are right, sir. Huang Guanzi said seriously. Think about what I said to Lord Donghai. Under Cloud Mountain the Shinryu showed up. Call the second dragon's son, Lord Tongtian, and the ninth dragon's son, Lord Wei, to the Dragon Island. Lord Donghai has been asking around for information these days. You should know that I am not exaggerating. Lord Donghai sighed again. Yes. Then this is where things go wrong. Huang Guanzi also sighed. Two outstanding people. In a short period of time, they have outstanding cultivation, and they know Tao. Now, they have the favor of the Shinryu, and will be summoned to the Dragon Island. In the past, the Dragon Son of the Sea and the Dragon Son of the Land had nothing to do with each other. In my opinion, the Shinryu used the Dragon Son of the Land to do things, to control and intimidate the demons on the land. And the Dragon Son of the Sea is used to protect the Dragon Island. The emperors of the world also have such a thing. The border army is used to quell the chaos, and the imperial guards are used to protect the emperor's palace. The two usually do not meet, to prevent the border army and the imperial guards from colluding, having wild ambitions and doing bad things. But now the Shinryu actually summoned them to the Dragon Island, to ask the two foreign officials to enter the capital. Lord Donghai, Huang Guanzi said meaningfully, there is one thing you know. 1,000 years ago, the original owner of Penglai Island lost the favor of the Shinryu, and lost all his magic power. Now it has been another 1,000 years. The demon suddenly frowned and was stunned. After a while he stared at Huang Guanzi. You mean? Huang Guanzi shook his head mysteriously. I didn't say anything. Lord Donghai should have thought about these things yourself. I just feel that it is too ridiculous and hard to imagine. Now that I have spoken my own thoughts, I feel that I have the same thoughts. Lord Donghai, you actually know everything. The two sat in the courtyard facing each other for a while. Only the faint sound of the wind could be heard. After a long time, Lord Donghai stood up with a solemn face, walked a few steps with his hands behind his back, and turned back. Penglai is the gateway to the Dragon Island. But the Lord Donghai did not ask me to let anyone go to the Dragon Island. She did not even mention this. If she really intended to ask them, Huang Guanzi smiled slightly and twirled his beard again, but accidentally pulled out a strand. He frowned and looked at his hand quickly, and then put it down quietly. He carefully kept the beard. What I said just now is just one of the reasons why Lord Donghai had to act. The two Dragon Son of the Land are favored by the Lord Donghai, and are already a threat to Lord Donghai. Chapter 629. What the Lord of the Eastern Sea is talking about is the second reason why we have to act. Lord of the East Sea is right. If you want to summon them to the island, why not ask Lord of the East Sea to let them go? Even if she doesn't want you to know about this, she should have given them a secret passage. However, Lord Shinryu is not an outsider. If she really asked them to go to the Dragon Island secretly, because of Lord of the East Sea, wouldn't she be afraid of Lord of the East Sea? That would be a big joke. Lord of the East Sea is majestic. How could he be afraid of his subordinates? Then, it can only be because of another thing. Huang Guanzi smiled and pointed at the demon in front of him. She wants to ask Lord of the East Sea to be a door god and a testing stone. Lord of the East Sea will not be happy to let them pass, so there will be a conflict. If you fight, you'll be the last trial. If they are really powerful, they can defeat Lord of the East Sea and go to the Dragon Island. Then Lord will naturally be irreplaceable. If they are not powerful enough and are defeated by Lord of the East Sea, it will mean that Lord of the East Sea is much stronger than them. That meant that the Divine Lord was much stronger than them. Even if the Divine Lord wanted to find a few new favored officials, he would have to spend more time. Lord of the East Sea can use this time to turn the tide. Lord of the East Sea, am I right? The demon was stunned for a while and frowned. Sir, these are all your speculations. Huang Guanzi laughed. This kind of speculation is not uncommon. In fact, this kind of thing is the most common on the land. Lord of the East Sea doesn't understand the countries on the land. The emperors and officials of the dynasties on the land like to play this kind of trick the most. When Junshang looked at these things, he felt that they were in the clouds, and were all just speculations. But in the eyes of those people, it is no different from telling you in black and white. This is called the way of officialdom, the way of power. Otherwise, Lord of the East Sea, think about it. 1,000 years ago, you suddenly got the favor of Shinryu and owned Mount Punglai. What is the reason? Lord of the East Sea can't figure it out. Maybe there are many similar points at that time, but you just can't see them. 1,000 years ago, Lord of the East Sea was lucky and got everything. Now another 1,000 years, Lord of the East Sea still wants to rely on luck and let things develop? The demon's frown deepened. He only cared about pacing in the hall. After the time it took to brew a cup of tea, he finally said, But Huang Guanzi sighed. No buts, Junshang. The worst-case scenario is that we misunderstood the Divine Lord's intentions. He had killed 2 of her favorite land-based dragon son. But under such circumstances, what could a Divine Lord do? At most, I'll just reprimand you. I've already lost 2 of my best men. Do you really want to lose a 3rd one? But if we're right and you don't make a move, the consequences will be dire. Is Junshang willing to use your cultivation and future to gamble on this? Is Lord willing to part with Punglai Island? Huang Guanzi sat on the stone block, his body steady as if it had grown roots. But his tone suddenly deepened. What's more, Junshang has another reason. If that Li Yunqin breaks into Punglai Island and takes Lady Mingyue away. Lord Donghai froze. The hesitant look on his face was swept away. He suddenly turned his face and looked fiercely at the Taoist priest from the Freemasonry. Sir, tell me, what should I do? Huang Guanzi slapped his palm fiercely. This is what we want Lord Donghai to be like. Lord Donghai, listen to me. Let's divide this matter into 3 steps. The first step is to eliminate Li Yunqin's henchmen. As far as I know, he brought 2 assistants with him. One of them, Lord Tongtian, has been captured by Junshang. The other one has a mediocre cultivation and is nothing to be afraid of. So Junshang has completed the first step. The second step is to take down that Li Yunqin. Huang Guanzi straightened up excitedly. I came to Punglai this time because I have the responsibility of the Freemasonry Society. Although you and I belong to different forces, we have the same goal in this matter. Junshang doesn't want Li Yunqin to appear in Donghai and land on Dragon Island. And we want to capture the culprit who destroyed Yunshan and the Freemasonry. So the second step is to capture him alive. Lord Donghai frowned when he heard this. He's in the mysterious realm. It's already very difficult to kill him. Capturing him alive is easier said than done. Huang Guanzi smiled. Isn't Lord Tongtian in Junshang's hands? Since Shinryu appointed Lord Tongtian to come to Dragon Island, he must be an important person. Although we don't know. But Li Yunqin should know clearly. So he must come to save him. You and I will wait at ease. First, we will use that Lady Mingyue, Sheng Guanyu as a threat, and then use this Lord Tongtian, the 9th young master, as a threat. We don't need to worry that he won't fall for it. Speaking up to this point, he saw Lord Donghai's hesitant expression, so he smiled again. Don't worry, Junshang. I know what you want to say. As for Li Yunqin, he doesn't care about some people, but he will definitely take care of others. We have fought with him for so long, and suffered many losses. This is one of the few gains we have. Let's send someone to provoke him first. Provoke him into anger, and then lead him to the depths of the East Sea. Junshang once told me that the East Sea is vast, and there are many powerful monsters in the depths that even Junshang can't control. When the time comes, we will send someone to provoke them, and they will definitely fight. Let Li Yunqin fight with those monsters. Take turns to wear them down for a period of time. Whether those monsters are defeated or Li Yunqin is defeated, it will be a good thing for Junshang. Then we will lead him to the formation we have set up. Lord Donghai frowned in thought, and suddenly interrupted him. Do you know the art of painting, mister? My clone was sealed by Li Yunqin. I heard from Lady Mingyue that the art of painting is very magical. I'm afraid that he has sealed my clone because he has some unfathomable method. Hearing this, Huang Guanzi laughed. You worry too much, Lord Donghai. Lord Donghai, in my opinion, after Li Yunqin destroyed your clone and sealed it, he must have pretended to study that piece of paper for a long time. In the eyes of others, they only think that he really has some ability, and is really going to do something. Lord Donghai, When the great fiendish demon in front of him heard that, his expression changed. Huang Guanzi noticed the change in his expression and blinked. "Is there anything you haven't told me, Lord Donghai?" The demon said with a little embarrassment. "You are right, mister. Last night, my clone was destroyed. I was really nervous. I don't know what tricks this guy on the land has that I don't know, so I sent another clone to watch from afar. I saw Li Yunxin stay on the deck of that ship for a long time, drawing on that piece of paper." Speaking of this, he stopped. He was the Dragon King of the East Sea, a big demon in the mysterious realm. After his clone was sealed in his own home, he immediately became so timid that he only dared to watch from afar, for the time being. Who would dare to say this kind of thing? Huang Guanzi didn't want to laugh at him. He just raised his hand and gently touched his beard. That's it. Think about it. If he really wanted to use the art of painting to do something, it would be too late to hide it. How could he openly show it to others on the East Sea, knowing that this world is one with him? This is clearly a show for Lord Donghai to see. It is to make you not dare to do anything to him for the time being, not to mention the ninth young master. He changed the topic and sneered. A month ago Li Yunxin succeeded with the art of painting, and I was worried. Now, he thinks he is clever and messes up the spiritual qi in the world, so that mortals can no longer cultivate, and also made the Xianmen fall apart. But he forgot that for people like us, it is only cultivation that has become difficult. Most of the divine abilities that we should have can still be used, with some slight adaptations. But his art of painting originally wanted to depict the spiritual qi of all things in the world in detail into the scroll. In the past, although the qi between heaven and earth was unpredictable, it was like the undercurrent above the East Sea. It looked chaotic, but there was always a pattern. Now that he stirred the world, the spiritual qi danced wildly, and it would take tens of thousands of years to calm down. He couldn't use much of his painting skills, especially the more profound ones. He relied on his demon body. And in the end, he cut off one of his arms. Seeing that Lord Donghai was still frowning, he knew that he was just talking to his heart's content. But he forgot that this big demon lived on the sea for a long time, and didn't care about the land, so he didn't know much about Tao. So he patiently waved his hand in the air. A small pool of water appeared in the void. He blew into the water again, and dense whirlpools appeared on the surface, splashing water everywhere. Lord Donghai, please look. This pool of water is like the qi between heaven and earth in the past. Although there are many whirlpools, and they look chaotic, after a long time, we still know how many whirlpools there are, how they spin, and how strong they are. So when we cast spells, we follow the whirlpools. This way, we can move mountains and fill the sea with half the effort. The art of painting is similar. They also observe the number of whirlpools, the direction and the strength. Then they use special techniques to simulate these on magic paper. After that, when we use the art of painting, it is like controlling a marionette. We only need to move the things on the magic paper, and the whirlpools in the real world will also be affected. At this point, he put his hand into the water again, and stirred it up violently. Lord Donghai, look again. This is the current state of the spiritual qi between heaven and earth. Everything has been messed up by him. We are in the whirlpool, and although it is chaotic, we can occasionally catch up with the tide, and we can still cast spells. But that Li Yunxin uses the art of painting, so he must first simulate the chaotic situation on the magic paper, before he can reverse it, and use it on the pool of water. But now there are no rules. Just like how my hand is stirring the water, he can't use it no matter how powerful he is. The reason why I told Lord Donghai not to worry is because of how vast the East Sea is, and how chaotic the spiritual qi is. But now he has shot himself in the foot, so he can only stay on the deck, and put on an act for others to see. Huang Guanzi's eyes shone with a fervent light. We have suffered a lot from him. Now we have finally found out everything about him. With the right time, the right place, and the right people, we must make him pay all the debts he owes in the past. Ha ha ha. How would he know that there is a person like me beside Lord Donghai? Chapter 630. Huang Guanzi danced with joy and laughed. This was one of his rare moments of joy. This guy looked funny, and he seemed to know it. Therefore, he always had an inscrutable look, as if he wanted to use his temperament to save his appearance. Although the effect was minimal, it was better than nothing. Now that he had lost his composure, it was truly unsightly. Dong Haijun looked away in embarrassment and coughed. Well, why don't you tell me what to do next? Huang Guanzi sat down again and grinned. Next, Dong Haijun, let's beat him at his own game. Since Li Yunqin wants to use painting methods to make Jun Shang hesitate in taking action, then Jun Shang will really let him think so. Send some demon soldiers and demon generals to attack him, and pretend to take away the painting in his hand. Li Yunqin thinks that his plan has succeeded, so he won't push too hard. He always likes to plan before taking action. Then take this opportunity to find more helpers. Dong Haijun. Huang Guanzi became serious again. Lord Dong Hai will find the remaining 8 Dragon Kings and ask them for help. Dong Haijun frowned. What for? Huang Guanzi shook his head. Don't worry, my lord. Listen to me again. In the beginning, Shinryu was afraid of the power of the Dragon Sun on land, so they did not dare to attack them easily. Later, they were greatly weakened by the power of Li Yunqin. She is afraid of the Dragon Sun on land, so how can she not be afraid of the sea, which is closer to her? In my opinion, the reason why those people lost favor 1,000 years ago is actually the same reason why emperors in the human world changed their generals every once in a while. Shinryu did not let them have power for too long, because they were afraid that they would not be able to control it. I guess, Dong Haijun is different from the Dragon Sun on land. Shinryu may have a way to take back the power of the Dragon Sun on the sea, but they can't do anything about the land. Dong Haijun, think about it. Do you know the reason? The demon looked at him and did not say anything. After a while he said, I don't know either. Huang Guanzi smiled. I'm just asking casually. Let's continue. Dragon King summoned the others. Firstly, it was to ensure his safety and to take down that Li Yunqin. Secondly, he wanted to show it to Shinryu and let her know that Juanshang is not the Lady Penglai of the past. If something happens to Jun Shang and the others, and the world is in chaos right now, it might cause the Eastern Sea's water tribes to become restless, making things difficult for her. This is the best of both worlds. Jun Shang must do this. Lord Dong Hai hesitated for a while and paced back and forth in the courtyard. Then, he stood up and looked at Huang Guanzi. When you came here, you were invited by me as an outsider to teach me some of the local customs of the land. Only then did I find out about Mr.'s talent, the Freemasonry that Mr. resided in, and more inside information about the struggles on land. But there's one thing I don't understand today. You're such a calm and peaceful person. Why do you have such a drastic change in mood when you mention Li Yunqin? Why do you even want me to join forces with other Dragon Kings on the sea to annihilate him? What's the inside story? Huang Guanzi seemed to be thirsty from all the talking, and was about to reach for the conch pot on the table. Hearing Lord Donghai's question, his arm hung in the air, and the expression on his face became strange. Lord Donghai knew that he had asked the right question. There was indeed something hidden about him. But when he looked again, he found that Huang Guanzi's face had turned red. About 2 or 3 breaths of time passed. Huang Guanzi withdrew his hand, turned his face away, and coughed to suppress the redness on his face. Then he calmed himself down and looked at Lord Donghai, who had an expression that said, Just say it, what's the big deal? Since Lord Donghai has asked, there's nothing to hide. He frowned. There's a female cultivator on Mount Yunshan, called Xianxilio. I adore her, but she died in the hands of Li Yunqin. For the sake of my Taoist heart, I must capture Li Yunqin and bring him back to me to kill him. The demon didn't want to hear such an explanation, and was stunned for a moment. After a while he laughed. There's actually such a thing. He saw Huang Guanzi's expression gradually become uneasy. Then he said, I don't mean anything else, I'm just surprised. Master told me that the cultivation of the cultivators of the Xianmen must abandon all desires. In the end, Master fell in love with a female cultivator. Speaking of this, he laughed again. But it was not a mocking smile, nor a fake one, but a genuine one. But Master is a sentimental person like me. This is good, this is good. But since it's over, you have to let it go. You used to adore each other. Now that he's gone, it's only right to settle the score with him. Huang Guanzi coughed lightly. If it weren't for the love tribulation between us, with my talent, I wouldn't be stuck in the true state. This battle is not only related to Lord Donghai, but also to me. Lord Donghai, let's work together and take what we need. There will be many opportunities for cooperation in the future. Lord Donghai sighed and glanced in the direction of Lady Mingyue in the east. I hope so. Li Yunqin shouldn't have come to the East Sea, and he shouldn't have gotten involved in her affairs. After saying this, he cupped his hands. Master, since I've made up my mind, I'll do it immediately. I'll first instruct the generals to prepare the troops, and then act according to the plan. In a few days, I'll come again to finalize our formation strategy. I'll have to trouble Master for the next few days. Huang Guanzi solemnly cupped his hands. Don't worry, Lord Donghai. I'll do my best in this matter. So the big demon nodded and left with the wind. Huang Guanzi stood in the courtyard for a while. After about 10 minutes, Lord Donghai had gone far away, and his divine sense couldn't easily reach here. Only then did he slowly put his hand into his sleeve and took out something. It was none other than a strand of beard that he had accidentally plucked from his lips. He stared at the beard for a while, then reached out to touch his lips, and another 3 or 4 strands fell off. The beard was sparse to begin with, but now it was thicker on one side and thinner on the other, making it even more comical. Huang Guanzi seemed to be angry. He simply pulled left and right, pulling out the beard on both sides. Then he took out a pen and added 2 more strokes to his lips, leaving 2 black marks on them. The black marks quickly changed into 2 new strands of beard. Huang Guanzi touched the 2 strands of beard and drew on his body with the pen, as if he was mending something. When he was done, he let out a sigh of relief and looked to the east for a while. He used to have a wretched appearance, but now his eyes were very melancholy, which made his temperament different. If Lord Donghai was here, he would think that he was missing Xian Shiliu, who died because of Li Yunqin. Chapter 631. When the Lord of Donghai left the courtyard where Huang Guanzi was and returned to the hall, he ran into the officer, who was exaggerating how he won the favor of Madame Mingyue, and how they talked and laughed together. Therefore, the Lord of Donghai couldn't get away for a while. He was going to walk in from the door of the hall. Hearing the officer's words, he stood by the door. He told the demon soldiers on duty to be quiet. He stood alone in the corridor and turned around. As he listened to the junior colonel's exuberant speech, he raised his head slightly to look at the distant sky. Today's weather was not good. The sky was leaden. This hall was built on Mount Penglai, the main peak of Penglai Island. Mount Penglai was huge. Even the group of palaces made up of this hall, and nearly 100 other palaces and halls only occupied a small part of the peak. There were other mountains on the island, nearly 100 large and small ones. Each one was guarded by a demon general. When he was an officer, he was not qualified to live on the top of even the lowest mountain. But now he could see all the other mountains. This change made him proud for 1,000 years. Even now, when he saw the whole Penglai Island again, he was still shocked. Because of this shock, he listened to the officer's words in the hall and slowly clenched his fists. The Lord of Donghai had never set foot on the land, so he didn't know the life of the human world. But there was a certain feeling that should be common to the people on the land. People from humble and poor backgrounds might be more persistent than ordinary people about things that were already in their control. He looked at the sky in the hall, thinking of the people in the east, and the thing in the sea further east. Finally, he stepped into the hall. The officer saw him first, stopped talking, and suddenly lay on the ground. The demons in the hall also saw him. They were all like frightened sparrows, and didn't make a sound. Only the sound of copper coins rolling on the ground could be heard in the hall. 1 or 2 demon generals were so frightened that they dropped their bets in a flurry. The Lord of Donghai walked slowly among the officials with a calm face. When he walked into the hall, he stopped and looked at the ground. Then he bent down and reached out to pick up the 3 heavenly seal. He weighed them in his hand, glanced at the silent demon generals in the hall, and put the copper coins into his sleeve. "You're using me as a gambling chip for fun." He started walking again and said in a low voice, "You can't not give me a bonus." Everyone was shocked by his first sentence, and felt as if a huge rock was pressing down on their chests. But because of his second sentence they were stunned. After 2 or 3 breaths, they slowly raised their heads and looked at each other in dismay, making sure that they didn't hear wrongly. His eyes widened and his mouth opened wide as he looked at Lord Donghai, who had walked up to the platform and stood in front of the dragon throne. The Dragon King of the Eastern Sea now had a slight smile on his face. They were not mistaken, and he even smiled again. "Have you guys not done a lot of bold things? Now I look like this. Am I that Punglai?" The demons looked at each other again. In the end, they came to the same conclusion: the colonel was right. Indeed, Lord Donghai had won Lady Minua's favor and was in a good mood. Some people laughed, and others laughed along with them. General Jean Lang laughed. "My lord, you scared us. I thought that Jun Shang would send them to the sea to peel their scales." Lord Donghai raised his hand. "Rise all of you." After saying this, he took 2 steps on the platform. Looking at the demons in the hall, he smiled and sighed. "Peel their scales. This kind of thing has never happened in the past 1,000 years. Since Punglai was expelled by us, this Punglai island has been peaceful. Many of you have experienced what happened at that time with me, and also experienced the days under Punglai's rule. Alas, I have been Jun Shang for 1,000 years. But when have I ever forgotten our old friendship?" After he said this, the hall fell silent. General Jean Lang was smiling before, but now his smile quickly disappeared, and he became a little confused. He didn't know why he suddenly said this. But what he said was the truth. Many of the demons in the hall now had higher official positions than this Dragon King of the Eastern Sea, when Goddess Punglai ruled Punglai Island. But in the end, it was not them who won the favor of Shinryu, but Lord Donghai, who risked his life to go to the Dragon Island. When Lord Donghai first took charge of Punglai, some people were arrogant and unruly. At that time, he used both carrot and stick, quickly calming these emotions with thunderous means, which led to the stable situation for more than 1,000 years. But in any case, these demon generals had a good life under Lord Donghai's rule. Jun Shang still remembered the old friendship of his comrades in the past. They dared to complain and laugh in the hall because they knew this. But now that it was mentioned again, General Jean Lang shrank his body. Seeing that Lord Donghai also saw their expressions and reactions, the smile on his face gradually disappeared. He said, "I mention this because I have something to say." He paused and said in a deep voice, "Punglai is coming back. You should have all heard about this. But there are 2 other people with her. One, I have already caught back yesterday. He claims to be the 9th young master, Lord Tongtian, and Ba Wei. He dared to call himself Lord, so I asked him. I know that he is indeed a land dragon king, long heir Lord Tongtian. The other one is called Li Yunxin. It should be the land 9 dragon, Chiwen, and Lord Wei River." When he said this, the demons in the hall were still a little confused. Lord Donghai shook his head. "You don't know this, but I do. For many years, we have been on the East Sea. We feel that the East Sea is vast and the land is narrow. We don't even care about the demons on the land, and we don't even bother to ask. We are around the world's demon master. How can we care about anything else? But later, we slowly came into contact with some people and things on the land. These years, we really want to go to the land. I know more than you do, so I know that there are many powerful people on the land. The Lord Wei River who came with Punglai now is one of them." When he said this, he gradually saw some uneasy looks on the faces of the officials in the hall. Some things were more taboo, even here, even if it was said by Lord Donghai. Like the demons on the land, most of the demons on the sea were also living creatures who achieved Tao. In terms of temperament, they may be wilder than the demons on the land. Because there were very few people on the sea, there were few rules of etiquette and morality. Such demons were unlikely to have any thoughts and think that there is nothing worth caring about on the land. The reason for this was because of the unwritten ban of Shinryu. Although there was no inscription on the tablet, everyone knew that Lord Shinryu, didn't like the dragon's son on the sea to get involved in the affairs on the land, and she didn't like them to have contact with people and things on the land. In a limited number of conversations with the dragon kings on the sea, the true dragons would definitely express their strong displeasure towards such matters, and their contempt towards the demons on land. Because of her authority, this view gradually took root in people's hearts. As time went on, demons would occasionally come into contact with things from the land, and then they slowly realized that some things were not the same as what Lord Donghai said. Maybe she had some other considerations. But at this moment, Lord Donghai publicly said in the hall, "I really want to go to the land." The demons couldn't help but feel a little nervous. Lord Donghai saw their reaction, and was not surprised. He just paused and said in a deep voice, "You all don't want to go back to the days under Punglai, and I won't let her succeed. But now the biggest threat is not her, but the Lord of Wei River beside her. I have here what that person used to do on the land. You can take a look first. Look carefully, and then listen to me." After saying this, he waved his hand and displayed his magical power. A small light spot appeared in front of many demon generals. As long as they touched it and immersed their spiritual mind in it, they could really see what Li Yunxin had done in the past. But this seeing was not seeing, nor was it hearing. It was just knowing some things about Li Yunxin that Lord Donghai himself knew. It was like sharing Lord Donghai's knowledge about Li Yunxin directly to the consciousness of those demon generals. Compared to the real listening and seeing, it was many times more convenient. This was Lord Donghai's natural magical power. Since he was with the East Sea, it was not difficult for him to let these demons in the sea know his mind. As a result, about 3 or 4 breaths later, the demons in the hall were a little shocked and looked at each other for the 3rd time. Previously, Lord Donghai caught the 9th young master because he swallowed dozens of demon generals in the sea. However, these demon generals were all low-ranking generals, and their job was to swim in the sea. The 9th young master was eaten, Lord Donghai was angry, and he was caught. In the eyes of the demons in the hall, it was not very scary. Even though this land demon, who called himself Lord of Tongtian, had displayed astonishing power in prison, General Jinlang was not too afraid of him. Fan complained in the hall, without a trace of fear on his face. But now that he knew what Lord Donghai knew, even if it was only a small part of the many things Li Yunxin had done, he still realized that the Lord of Wei River was really a terrible person. He also realized that there were indeed so many powerful beings on the land, and such a prosperous world. And he could stand out among so many powerful beings. To be frank, they used to think that Lord Donghai was a model counterattack. Looking at this Wei River Lord, he was even stronger than him. Punglai found such a helper to come to the island. It seemed that things were really going to be a little dangerous. Lord Donghai and the others digested this. Then he looked at the demon generals and said something else. "There is one more thing I should tell you. This Lord Tongtian, the Lord of Wei River, it is said that he was summoned by the Lord Shinryu. What they did on the land has won the favor of Shinryu." Now, as he said this, he lowered his voice and paused. Finally, there was a bold and impatient one who shouted, "Why does the Lord like the things on the land? Didn't you say that the land?" At this point, he realized that he had said something wrong and quickly stopped. But what he wanted to say was what Lord Donghai wanted them to say. After this sentence, everyone in the hall was silent, and the atmosphere became a little strange. Lord Donghai was still Lord Donghai, the Lord of Donghai that Shinryu had conferred. And the officials were still the officials who stood beside Lord Donghai and respected Shinryu. But now they slowly realized one thing. They were not as favored by Shinryu as they had thought. Shinryu had done many things and admired many people on the land. They used to think that they were the nobles among the demons, and the nobles. But now they slowly realized that it might not be the case. Everything was just wishful thinking, or maybe someone wanted them to think so. They just wanted to trap them on the sea. No one dared to say who this person was. No one dared to say whether this was true or not. But their thoughts and consciousness seemed to have turned into a substance, floating in the dark and deep hall. They were absorbed into their bodies and fermented. They were released through their eyes and fermented. This strange silence lasted for a while, and finally someone broke it. The Baihua general stood up. At this time, the color of his face changed again, turning slightly green and blue. "Lord," he said in a low voice, "we all know what you mean. No matter what the reason is, Donghai is ours. Anyone who wants to attack us must listen to Juanshang's words." At this time, there was a fact that everyone in the hall should know. Penglai was the former owner of Penglai Island. The Wei River Lord was someone who was favored by the true dragon. Now the two came back together. God knows if it was a coincidence or someone else's intention. And these people didn't seem to be that important in Shinryu's mind. Who knew if they could be replaced? Previously in the courtyard, Huang Guanzi said something to Lord Donghai, which made these thoughts go deep into his heart. Now Lord Donghai slowly transferred these thoughts to the hearts of the demons in the hall. If Li Yunxi knew these things, he would think that Lord Donghai was actually smarter than those guys from Xianmen and the Freemasons. Maybe it was because he was born at the bottom, or maybe he didn't have as much prejudice as those from the land. At least before he did something, he knew to combine the thoughts of his subordinates with his own. With some subtle dissatisfaction, the demons tied their own interests with Lord Donghai's. Then they fought against the enemy together. The man from the land who was praised by Shinryu at the foot of Mount Cloud, and was summoned to Dragon Island. At this time, Lord Donghai let out a sigh of relief. Then this may be dangerous. But on the bright side, it may be a trial for the immortal Lord. Let's first. As he said this, his expression suddenly changed. After 2 breaths, the demons in the hall also changed their expressions. Because suddenly, a strong sense of oppression filled the whole space. It was as if the air in this gloomy hall had turned into water. No mercury, pressing down on everyone's body. Along with this sense of oppression, there was a strong sense of awe. First, a few demon generals couldn't stand it anymore and knelt on the ground. Then, Lord Donghai's expression turned cold, and he also knelt on the ground. This time, the group of demons were like wheat that had been blown away by the wind, and they all fell to the ground. Dazzling light gathered in the air, and a majestic and noble figure appeared in the hall. Lord Shinryu's clone had arrived. She glanced around with her bright eyes, and no one could tell whether she was happy or sad. Finally, her eyes stopped on Lord Donghai. She stared at him for 2 breaths, and said, "You took down the man from the land. Seal his divine abilities. When the tide falls, throw him into the abyss. No mistakes." Chapter 632. This was the first time that Shinryu had appeared in front of the demons. Her brilliant radiance and majestic aura made even the most unruly demon feel a deep sense of fear. When they were talking about the Lord Shinryu in the hall, she was just a symbol. For example, the blazing sun in the sky. It shone brightly and had amazing heat. But when they were so far away from the small demons, they only felt that the power was also far away, and they couldn't feel the real pressure. But now they felt it. After 2 sentences, some demon generals with slightly lower cultivation, the ones guarding outside the hall, had already fainted. The rest didn't even dare to raise their heads. Only the Lord of the East Sea's face was still barely calm. He raised his head slightly and bowed to Shinryu again. "Lord above. Lord, which one do you want?" As soon as he said this, one of the demons in the hall also fainted. It was a taboo to make friends with the people of the land. Now the Lord of the East Sea even asked, "Which one do you want?" Perhaps the Lord of the East Sea also heard what they said in the hall just now. But Shinryu only stayed silent for a while. After 2 extremely unbearable breaths of time, he finally said, "You can hand over whichever one you want." After saying this, she paused again, and her tone became slightly lower. "Lord of the East Sea, you should think carefully about what to do in the Eastern Sea in the near future. Whether you want to listen to me or not, think about it. Don't disappoint me." As soon as she said this, the grand light in the hall quickly disappeared. In just a moment, the hall became dark again, and all the aura disappeared in an instant. If you didn't look at the people crawling on the ground, and those who had fainted, they thought it was a dream. After a while, the demons slowly looked up. They first saw that the roof of the hall had indeed returned to darkness, and then they looked down again. The Lord of the East Sea, who saw them, had already stood up, frowning in deep thought. At this time, the demons didn't dare to make a sound. It was as if they had returned to the Lord of the East Sea when he was angry. They lowered their heads, crawled on the ground, and didn't speak. Shinryu's appearance in the hall could be said to be instantaneous. But after this sudden appearance, the impassioned atmosphere in the hall quickly calmed down. Lord Donghai knew how the demon soldiers and generals under his command felt at the moment. If he told them what he had said before, they would not be able to hear a single word. But that wasn't the most important thing right now. It was easy to guess the thoughts of these demons. The most important thing was, what did the Divine Lord mean by appearing here? Did she hear what was said before? How much did she hear? Why was she acting like this? The great fiendish demon frowned and stood on the platform for a moment before suddenly asking, General Jin Lang, is the Lord Tongtian still in the water prison? General Jin Lang was one of the few demons who could remain calm in this group of demons. He wiped the cold sweat off his forehead and looked around, as if Shinryu's eyes were nowhere to be seen. He lowered his voice and said, My lord, I'm still here. Very well. Lord Donghai was silent for a while. You may leave. We'll talk about today's matter later. After saying this, he walked out of the hall ahead of the demons and went straight to the water prison. The rest of the demons in the hall did not dare to move for a long time. Even Lord Donghai could not figure out what was going on. How could they know what was going on? They could only tremble in fear. There was still some distance between the hall and the water prison. But for some reason, Lord Tongtian did not fly in the air. Instead, he walked step by step like a mortal. As he walked, he thought of what Shinryu said. Throw yourself into the abyss. In this Penglai Island, the abyss was not a general term like the ocean abyss, but a specific term. There was the abyss on Penglai Island, the ruins on Ingzhou Island, and the desolation on Square Pot Island. These three were the entrances to the Dragon Island guarded by the three islands. There were powerful enchantments around the three islands. Previously, Goddess Penglai was forced to go to the enchantment near the abyss. Although Lord Donghai had the ability to force his way in, it was a taboo of Lord Shinryu to enter the abyss. He had already broken the taboo once when he broke into the Dragon Island, and he paid a heavy price when he gained power. At that time, he did not dare to do it again. Besides, Shinryu was unpredictable, so he let Goddess Penglai linger in the enchantment for 1,000 years. That was why Lord Donghai set it as a forbidden area, and forbade the demon soldiers and generals from approaching. But now, Shinryu asked him to throw Lord Tongtian into the abyss. According to Huang Guanzi, Lord Shinryu appeared at the foot of Yinshan that night, and praised Li Yunxin and Lord Tongtian. Then he asked them to go to the Dragon Island as a reward. That was why Lord Donghai felt a sense of crisis, and realized that something bad might happen to him. According to this, Shinryu asked him to throw the 9th young master into the abyss, and release him to the Dragon Island, because she wanted to save him. But the problem was she also said to seal his power. So he was treated as a prisoner again. Then what was Shinryu's attitude toward Li Yunxin and Lord Tongtian? Could it be that she had acquiesced to his actions? Could it be, as Huang Guanzi said, that the true dragon wanted to let the dragon sons fight? To try it out? But she also asked him to think about what to do, and don't let her down. Lu Baishui said that he had befriended Lord Donghai's Mr. Shueiyue. He was telling the truth. This demon who was in charge of the East Sea's marine race was indeed interested in the people and things on the land. So he asked Lu Baishui to help him find skilled craftsmen on the land, and place them on Penglai Island, to make some good things that could only be found on the land. More importantly, he wanted to bring the land under his jurisdiction, so that he would have some ideas. He was a curious and ambitious great demon. But he also knew that these actions would make Shinryu unhappy, so he had been very careful. Just now, when the real dragon appeared in the hall, and said that he had captured the man from the land, Lord of Donghai's cautiousness came into play. Although he befriended Lu Ke, he did not go too far. So he could still ask which one to show that he knew what he did was not good. But it was not unforgivable. Now he confessed. It was like a child who did some bad things behind his mother's back, and was seen by his mother. But Lord Shinryu was silent for a while. He asked him to think about who he wanted to befriend. This think about it had a deep meaning. On the way down the mountain, Lord Donghai felt that his head was getting more and more swollen. Every detail and every word seemed to have a deep meaning. If he could have someone to analyze it with him, he would understand a lot. Huang Guanzi was a smart person, but he didn't want him to know too much. Lord Donghai was still a little wary of that person. After all, he was the Dragon King, not those simple-minded and stupid demon kings on the land. Now, he really could only think about it. But when these 3 words appeared in his mind again, he suddenly stopped, as if there was a thunder in his head. Could it be that Lord Donghai's think about it really meant what the words said, asking him to think about it himself instead of asking Huang Guanzi to help him think about it? Did Lord Shinryu also know that Huang Guanzi was on his island? Didn't she know everything? Huang Guanzi was different from Lady Mingyue. Lady Mingyue had accidentally ended up here, and she had little to do with the forces on the land. Even if she was a cultivator, she was just a person to him. It wasn't a big deal for Shinryu to know about such a person, especially when he really admired her. But Huang Guanzi was backed by the Freemasonry. His coming to the island was a secret, and Lord Donghai had been guarding this matter carefully. Just like the ministers of the human emperor, it wasn't a big deal to hide a singer and dancer at home. But if he made friends with some foreign force, it would be a different story. Lord Shinryu knew everything, but asked him to watch and hand over the person. Lord Donghai sucked in a breath of cold air. He began to realize, maybe it was as Huang Guanzi said. Shinryu really wanted him to stop Li Yunqin and Lord Tongtian and fight with them. That's why she asked him to think about what to do, and not to disappoint her. If he threw that Lord Tongtian into the abyss, then he would disappoint her. She was trying to see if her brain was as simple as that. He let out another long breath, feeling his back drenched in sweat. He had only met Shinryu a few times, but every time Shinryu said something meaningful, and he had to rack his brain to guess and think about it before he could understand a little bit of the deeper meaning. But in the end, he still didn't know if he did the right thing, or if Shinryu was satisfied. This time, however, was the most difficult to imagine out of all of them. Even though Lord Donghai came to this conclusion, based on his previous experience and the current situation, he still didn't dare to make a conclusion. He realized that he had to get more information from that Lord Tongtian. Based on what the Lord of Tongtian had said, he wanted to see if he had guessed the Lord of Heaven's intention correctly. Making up his mind, he looked up to the sky. Suddenly, a gust of evil wind blew under his feet, carrying him straight to the water prison. The water prison of Penglai was set under the deep sea. It was about 1,000 feet deep, and it was a canyon in the sea. At this depth, there was no sunlight, only darkness and heavy pressure. The entire canyon was surrounded by restrictions. Sea creatures without supernatural powers could freely enter and exit, but those with supernatural powers would find it difficult to enter and exit. There were originally not many prisoners in the prison. Before Lord Tongtian entered this prison, there were only 12 in the cave at the bottom of the valley. 8 of them were demons who were stubborn and still loyal to Goddess Penglai. They had been in there for 1,000 years. 4 of them were crazy, and the remaining 4 were probably not good. The other 4 came from the land to the sea. 3 demons and 1 cultivator. These guys were too curious. They wanted to explore the edge of the world and confirm whether the Ruoshui theory was illusory or not. But unfortunately, they broke into the territory of East Sea and didn't give face to the Dragon King of East Sea, so they were naturally locked up. Some were locked up for nearly 1,000 years, and some for hundreds of years. Their mental state should not be good, and their curiosity and thirst for knowledge should be gone. General Jinlang was in charge of this water prison, but as mentioned before, when he sent the 9th young master in, he was careless and let him escape. He even swallowed a few more. Compared to the demons on the land, the demons on the sea were like gentlemen. There were more people on the land. Those demons would eat people at the slightest disagreement to show that they were maverick, just like people in the secular world eating beef, to pretend to be good men. But how could the demons on the sea eat them? His voice was so deep that it went straight to the bottom of the valley, shaking up the sand on both sides of the cliff. When the ninth young master heard this, he stopped and looked up. The Lord of East Sea was about to say something else, but he saw that the Lord Tongtian did not say anything. The demon general who used to follow goddess Penglai shouted, "You Donghai rebel! It is time for you to die." Chapter 633. The one who spoke was none other than one of the unrepentant demons who used to follow goddess Penglai. He had long forgotten his name, and couldn't see his face clearly. He could only see that his face was blurry, and his clothes were ragged. Like a mad dog, it charged over aggressively, and crashed into the barrier at the top of the canyon. The restriction immediately shone brightly, illuminating the outside of the canyon. This inhibition had existed when goddess Penglai ruled Penglai Island. Since then, it could still trap the ninth young master, the dragon sun at the peak of the realm of truth, which showed how powerful it was. Half of the demon's face hit the ninth young master. He stared at Lord Donghai fiercely with his cloudy white eyes, as if he was going to release all the anger that had been locked up for thousands of years. But where the half of his face touched the inhibition, there was lightning and fire. Soon, half of his face was burned, but he still didn't step back until the bones of his face were burned out. He slowly stepped back and shouted, "You traitor! Your doomsday is coming." Lord Donghai looked at him calmly, and then at the ninth young master. "Lord Tongtian, I have something to ask you this time." The ninth young master put his hands behind his back and slowly rose from the bottom of the canyon. Maybe he learned the bad habit of showing off from Li Yunxin. He used some magic weapon to make his body surrounded by golden light, and a cloud appeared under his feet in the water. He put his hands behind his back and raised his head. His handsome face made him look like a perfect god, not a prisoner at all. When his followers saw him like this, they began to shout even louder. It seemed that the ninth young master was going to press Lord Donghai to the ground to vent their anger. So the Dragon King of the land rose to the front of Lord Donghai and stood face to face with him across the inhibition. Then he raised his hand. In this way, the followers behind him should have immediately shut up. But these stupid demons had been locked up for a long time. Except for the human cultivator, the rest were still cursing. The ninth young master waved his hand again, but they still didn't listen. He didn't move his body, but suddenly turned his head 180 degrees and showed them his fierce teeth. "Shut up." Only then did he quickly shut his mouth. Lord Donghai shook his head. Lord Tongtian, however, ninth young master turned his head around and extended his hand, indicating for him to shut up as well. "If you have something to say it to Li Yunxin. Before he comes, I won't say a word to you." The demon whose face was half burned by the seal immediately shouted, "But you already said it." This one was a lunatic. There were a few others behind him who were also crazy. Hearing this, they immediately jeered, forgetting their puppy-like appearance just now. That's right. Not just half a word, but many more half a word. The ninth young master shouted angrily, "Shut up! All of you shut up for this young master. Do you want me to swallow you?" When he roared, his body suddenly expanded, and for a moment he showed his god-demon form. The crazy demons were afraid again, and quickly became silent again. Lord Donghai frowned as he observed all this. He felt that the scene in front of him seemed to be slowly confirming his guess. If it wasn't a deliberate act, the ninth young master's mind was like that of a child. How could such a person get the favor of Shinryu? If it was a deliberate act, it meant that he and Li Yunxin had other plans. However, if the relationship between him and the Lord Shinryu was really sweet, they could just use the name of Shinryu. Why did they have to do this? It seemed that they were also wary of Shinryu. The ninth young master didn't say anything. At least that was how Li Yunxin acted. With this thought in mind, Lord Tongtian felt that the big stone in his chest was slightly loosened. His eyebrows slowly relaxed, and he looked at the ninth young master with interest. "I have seen Li Yunxin. But when I told him that you were in my hands, he didn't panic at all. From what you said, you seem to be following his lead. Aren't you afraid that he will leave you here and not care about you?" After saying this, he finally paid attention to the demons that were locked up. His face turned cold. Peng Lai is with Li Yunxin. But according to what I sensed last night, Peng Lai was sealed in a talisman by Li Yunxin. You guys want to wait for the demon to come back? I'm afraid you will have to wait until the day your soul disappears. But to his surprise, the crazy demons didn't lose their composure after hearing this. Instead they laughed. It was as if they already knew what he said. The ninth young master was even more proud. He raised his face and looked at him disdainfully. Hey, I have told them about these things. The little demon also told Li Yunxin about what happened on Peng Lai Island. And Li Yunxin told me about it. Let me teach you something you don't know. The ninth young master became happy when he said this. He seemed to have forgotten the words, not even half a word. How do you think I was captured by you? Ha ha ha. I swallowed so many stinky things on the East Sea. And then I lured you out and brought you here. You still don't know the secret of this place, do you? Come and beg me, and I will tell you. Ha ha ha. Speaking of this, the demons laughed together cooperatively. Lord Donghai was slightly stunned, and then he frowned. You, he said in a low voice. Is this the entrance? The ninth young master stared at him with a smile. Oh, it seems that you are not a fool. He clasped his hands behind his back and walked around proudly. That goddess Peng Lai is also a... Before he finished his words, he remembered that there were still a few lunatics around him. So he swallowed the word fool back. Humph, she told Li Yunxin that there was another entrance on Peng Lai Island that could lead to Dragon Island. Li Yunxin naturally had a way to get it out of her. Now that you know, give this important task to me. I told you to catch and imprison her here, so that I don't have to waste time to find out where this Peng Lai Island is. Then I will occupy this place, and then I can go to the Lord Shinryu. I am not afraid that you will stop me and make trouble on the sea. Ninth young master guffawed. Ha 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 ha. When Li Yunxin begged me to do this, she said that she would definitely be able to see the expression on your face. Now that she has seen it, it is truly marvelous. Ha 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 ha. Are you surprised and surprised? Do you want to rush in and drag me out? After saying this, the ninth young master pointed to the bright moon in the sky behind him, and his face turned cold. Humph. This treasure is called the Misty Lock-Toed Palace. It is not one of those useless things that I threw out when I pretended to fight with you. You can give it a try. Can I get in? Can I break it? At this time, the expression on Lord Donghai's face was really wonderful. If he was the general of 100 transformations, he would be green, purple, red, and white. 2 hours ago, he was still in the courtyard discussing with Huang Guanzi whether to deal with Li Yunxin and how to deal with Li Yunxin. 15 minutes ago, he had just made up his mind, thinking that he had finally figured out some things, and was about to make a move. But now he found out that Li Yunxin had already made a move. He thought that he had done a good job, capturing one of the 2 Dragon King on the continent, and taking the initiative. But he had fallen into a trap. The ninth young master laughed, and so did his followers. Lord Donghai stared at them with a gloomy face. After a long time he said, Good, good, good. Li Yunxin is ruthless enough, and the ninth young master is also bold enough. I should not have spared your life out of kindness when I caught you on the sea. I should have killed you directly, not letting him get what he wanted, and at the same time, helping you, a man of sacrifice. The ninth young master laughed again. What you said is not strange. Li Yunxin told me that if I was caught by you, and you knew what I was going to do, you would definitely say these words to sow discord. Now that I am in a good mood, let me tell you. I am not afraid of death. You can't kill me. Even if you break my soul, he still has a way to save it. Do you think I am a man of sacrifice? Hee hee. Then you are just a plaything in my eyes. Ha 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 ha. He had lived as the ninth young master for more than 1,000 years. During this period, his life had been ordinary, and could even be called cowardly. Later, he met Li Yunxin and his life changed. At first he fell to the bottom, losing his body and life. Then he rose to the peak. Just like these days, he lived with his head held high, and was in a good mood. At this time, he was not afraid to face a mysterious realm monster. She could even make the other party angry and helpless with just her words. She finally experienced the thrill of Li Yunxin when she manipulated and schemed against people in the past. It was extremely pleasant. Seeing him like this, Lord Donghai frowned more tightly. What a good fearless. Now that you have found the entrance, why don't you go in? What are you doing here? The ninth young master laughed. You think I am happy to stay here? But, he dragged out his voice. After seeing enough of Lord Donghai's bewildered look, he sighed. But he also told me to do something else after occupying this place. But after that, I can't see you like this anymore. What a killjoy. After saying this, he turned around and shouted, Go away, go away, go away. I am going to get down to business. Go back to the bottom, and wait for me to take over the East Sea. Then I will seal you. After shouting, he waved his hand, and the seawater surged and swept all the monsters down. Lord Donghai saw this scene, and the big stone in his heart became a little heavier. The power that the ninth young master showed now was even stronger than when he fought with his doppelganger. Initially, he still harbored a sliver of hope. He thought that this ninth young master was just bluffing and stalling for time. But this scene proved that he was indeed pretending to be weak at that time, and that he really wanted to enter the water dungeon. Seeing the ninth young master drive away those monsters, he waved to the bright moon over the valley. The moon approached, but its size was still the same, like a jade plate. After doing this, he sighed. Alas! What happened next is boring. Go ahead, go ahead. After saying this, he turned around and dived into the bottom of the valley. Lord Donghai didn't understand, but he didn't try to stop him. The ninth young master said he could try to enter. He didn't need to try to know. Huang Guanzi told him that Li Yunqin had a lot of treasures. When I fought with the cultivators of Xianmen and Yunshan, I gained a lot. Many high-level Taoist priests died in that battle. Just the magic treasures that I looted from them are enough to arm the two dragon kings. This magic treasure looked ordinary and unusual at the same time, so it must be a rare treasure. Since he dared to say and do this, he must have a strong confidence. In just a quarter of an hour, he was already at a disadvantage. There was no need to really try and be at a disadvantage. The Dragon King of the East Sea sighed in the water, but what he sighed out was also water. Then, he saw a figure gradually emerge from the bright moon within the restriction. It was a little familiar. The figure gradually became clearer, as if he was walking here. This wasn't an illusion. 2 breaths later, Li Yunqin walked out of the bright moon. The East Sea Lord was stunned, but he quickly restrained his expression and smiled bitterly, as if he was a magnanimous loser. Of course, it was just a small failure in the first round. This was just the beginning, and he was just careless. If he tried his best in the future, he would not let this kind of thing happen again. They fought back and forth, one sword and one saber. He had to let him know who was the king of Shinryu on this sea. Wei River Lord. The East Sea Lord shook his head. What a good plan. We only met for a day, and your clone came to my Penglai Island. I met you as a clone yesterday, and you met me as a clone today. That's kind of... But he was interrupted before he finished. Li Yunqin walked out of the bright moon, and looked around calmly, while the East Sea Lord was talking. After that he raised his hand. You misunderstood, East Sea Lord. He said in a low voice. It's not my clone now. This treasure has the effect of breaking the void and moving thousands of miles. There is one round here, and I have another one in my hand. I entered that round and came out from this one. So now I am face to face with the East Sea Lord. The Dragon King of the East Sea, who wanted to call himself calm and graceful, was stunned again. He stared straight at Li Yunqin. You how? He thought it was just the beginning. It was like a game of kuju. The opponent had just scored a goal. Although he felt a little defeated, he knew there was still a long way to go, and there was enough opportunity to turn the tables. But just as he thought about it, the whistle blew. He told himself that the game was over, and that he was going to leave. How could it be? Seeing his expression, Li Yunqin did not laugh ungracefully like the ninth young master. His expression was still serious. He looked straight at the Dragon King of the East Sea. Lord Tongtian and I were summoned here. The East Sea Lord didn't tell us how to get to the Dragon Island. It was a test, and he wanted us to find a way ourselves. Now that he and I have found a way, we can meet the Emperor. After saying this, he paused for a while. He looked at the East Sea Lord's face. The Dragon King of the East Sea's face was naturally very pale. He didn't even want to stay here for a second longer. The reason why he didn't leave immediately was because, if he did that, he would lose all his dignity. After a full 2 breaths of silence, he said, "Oh, then you can go away, River Lord. Why are you wasting time with me here?" Li Yunxin stared at him. "Because Shangguan Yu is in your hands. East Sea Lord. I am willing to give up this opportunity to meet the Emperor in exchange for her freedom." Chapter 634. The Dragon King of the East Sea suddenly opened his eyes wide. Like a frightened snake or an offended beast, he said, "What did you say?" Li Yunxin's face was calm. "You have heard it. I don't think you want us to go to see Shinryu." The Lord of the East Sea looked at him in surprise. As if he wanted to know him again, he didn't speak. Li Yunxin waited for him for a while. After 2 breaths, he sighed. "I thought you were a smart man. You know these things even if I don't say it. Now it seems that you are not, and I have to waste my breath. I don't really want to see Shinryu, at least at this time. Do you understand?" The Lord of the East Sea said warily. "What do you mean? This guy really doesn't play by the rules." Even though he had heard from Huang Guanzi about Li Yunxin's past, he knew that Li Yunxin always did unexpected things. But he didn't expect it to be to this extent. He thought he would slowly kill his way to Penglai, but now he had arrived. He thought he would go to see Shinryu when he arrived, but he said he would change to Shangguan Yu, even if it was 1 step. Now he couldn't predict 1 step, and the Lord of the East Sea was frightened. He didn't dare to guess what Li Yunxin meant, and what his purpose was. Li Yunxin spread out his hands. "What do you mean? Don't you understand?" The Lord of the East Sea didn't speak again. He had the spirit of, "I won't guess, don't try to trick me again." This was a stupid method, but it worked. In fact, it did make Li Yunxin unable to say some of the words he had thought before. What the hell? He thought this Lord of the East Sea dared to capture Shangguan Yu, and he was mentally strong enough to plan to kill or capture Shangguan Yu's son, and the Dragon King of the land. Who knew he was so cowardly? Then where did he get the courage to do those damn things before? Li Yunxin sighed. "Well, Lord of the East Sea, let's be honest. Do you know what I have done on the land?" But the Dragon King of the East Sea didn't say anything. He seemed to have made up his mind not to give Li Yunxin any chance. Li Yunxin didn't mind and continued. "Then you're clear. You should know that I had no choice but to come this far. I didn't want to be a demon, but I had to be one. I didn't want to be the Dragon King, but I had no choice but to be the Dragon King. Life is unpredictable. I originally just wanted to live an ordinary life." "Ha!" Lord Donghai finally said a word. Li Yunxin shook his head slightly. "But life is like that. We can only accept it. I was trapped in a crevice, and everything was unstable. In order to save his life, he could only look for a backer. When people didn't want me, I turned to the demons, to the Lord of the Demons, so you should have heard about it. At the foot of Mount Yinshan, Shinryu conferred me the title of Wei River Lord, and the 9th young master the title of Lord Tongtian. At this point, I have achieved my goal. Although the world is chaotic, there are not many who dare to mess with Dragon Sun." Li Yunxin paused and looked at Lord Donghai. He seemed to be looking for a resonance. This Lord Donghai's background should be similar to his. He found it. The Dragon King of the East Sea was still silent. But his face moved, as if he had some feelings and wanted to say something. But he suppressed it. He was originally a small demon under the rule of Penglai, because Penglai was cruel and tyrannical. And he lost his power, he rebelled. After being the Dragon King for 1,000 years, he was not bad to his former colleagues. So he should have some ideas. But he still didn't say anything. Li Yunxin sighed again. Who knew that Shinryu would ask us to come to Dragon Island? Lord Donghai, tell me the truth. Do you think this is a good thing? He wanted to use a few short sentences to resonate with Lord Donghai, because of their similar status and similar experiences. Since there was some resonance, he would slowly guide Lord Donghai to follow his own thinking pattern. But Lord Donghai was conservative and cautious. Maybe his real body was a big turtle? He was still holding it in. But his expression was a little calmer, because he found that Li Yunxin's tone was sincere, and his expression was sincere. It seemed that he was really talking about something. Li Yunxin was still not in a hurry. Since he didn't say it, he said it for him. You won't think it's a good thing. You and I both know that good things don't fall from the sky. When people with great power suddenly show special enthusiasm to you, it's either a trick or a trick. So when I was on land, when I was in the most difficult time, I didn't completely accept the help of some forces. Those guys have something to ask of me. Today they give you a piece of meat, but tomorrow they may ask you to pay with your life. I'm sure Lord Donghai has experienced this. He said this because he got some information from Goddess Punglai. The female demon said that she would tell Li Yunxin some other secrets when they arrived at Punglai Island. Unfortunately, she didn't know Li Yunxin's means and overestimated herself. When she really had to tell him some other things, Li Yunxin understood Lord Donghai better. This demon seemed to have paid a price to get the power he had today. Even Goddess Punglai didn't know the price, so it was hard for Lord Donghai to say it. Sure enough, after hearing this, Lord Donghai's expression loosened. He frowned slightly. He wanted to say it, but Li Yunxin didn't let him. He raised his hand and interrupted Lord Donghai. I also know the story of Lord Donghai and Goddess Punglai. Goddess Punglai was favored by Shinryu for 1,000 years, and then she lost her power. Lord Donghai was then granted power by Shinryu and guarded Dragon Island for another 1,000 years. At the foot of Cloud Mountain, when Shinryu asked me to come here, I didn't know what I was going to do. But when I got to the sea and knew about you, I had a terrible idea. Maybe they want me to be the new Dragon King of the Sea? Lord Donghai finally said. You don't know about this? Li Yunxin frowned and looked at him. So it's true? Lord Donghai stared at him suspiciously for a while. Then he said slowly and in a low voice, if what you said is true, then I guess so. Lord Donghai wants to give you, but I don't want it. Li Yunxin also snorted. I just want to enjoy the shade under a big tree and be a safe free man. There are things I like and people I care about on land. Maybe you like life on the sea, but I don't. Besides, if I become the Dragon King of the Sea, will I end up like you and Goddess Punglai in 1,000 years? I'm a demon and I have a long life. 1,000 years is just 10 years for mortals. You are afraid that I will go to Dragon Island with him and take away your position. But he and I don't want to go. Li Yunxin looked at him. Lord Donghai, you should know that I'm telling the truth. Under this premise, we can have a good talk. If you let Shengguan Yu go, I can give you something you want more. Then he waited quietly. Lord Donghai hesitated for a while and then said, if what you said is true, why do you have to find the entrance to Dragon Island? Li Yunxin smiled. If I wasn't standing in this restriction and talking to you at the entrance to the Dragon Island, would you still listen to me? Lord Donghai, in fact, the reason why you didn't turn around and leave, but listen to me, is that you also hope that I can persuade you. You also hope that I don't want to do this. Now you understand my mind. What do you say about my condition? Lord Donghai stared at him and slowly took a step back. He slowly took a step back. Since I know that going to the Dragon Island and becoming the Sea Dragon King is something that you can't accept, then why should I bother with you? I used to think that you really wanted my power. Now that you know that my honey is actually your arsenic, we have nothing to talk about. Li Yunxin was not flustered. Because you have something more you want, and only I can give it to you. Lord Donghai laughed. Madame Mingyue? She is not someone you can give. Li Yunxin's pupil suddenly shrank into a thin line. But he quickly recovered. He also laughed. How can a hero like Lord Donghai want more than a love affair? What you want more is greater power and a wider world. Hearing this, Dragon King of the East Sea was a little stunned at first. Then he sneered. Lord Wei River is talking nonsense. If you can give me these, do you still need to talk to me here? Besides, I don't want them. I am satisfied with the East Sea and the magical power I have now. Everything else is just fleeting clouds. Li Yunxin tilted his head. You know it's not like that. Then he looked at him. His gaze was calm, but it seemed to have some kind of power that could see through people's hearts. Because of his gaze, Dragon King of the East Sea frowned. He began to suspect that Li Yunxin had used some kind of magical power on him. From the moment they met until now, every word he said made him think carefully. as if every word was knocking on the top of his heart. Huang Guanzi's words were also very reasonable. But even Huang Guanzi's words often made him feel bored. And he didn't want to be perfunctory. But this Li Yunxin, what kind of trick did he use? People like him in this world would probably find it hard to understand the magical power that Li Yunxin was currently using. This kind of magical power was a mortal's magical power, the mortal's magical power, in the world where Li Yunxin came from. It was not that Li Yunxin, every word hit his heart. But Li Yunxin had figured out his thoughts in advance, and then carefully arranged every word according to his immediate reaction. People said that when talking with Li Yunxin, they would always fall into his trap if they were not careful. But in fact, it was not accidentally. The effort he spent was unimaginable to others. For example, now that he said these words, Lord Wei of the East Sea suddenly realized things seemed to be like this. As if there was a snow field in his heart. When he looked at the snow field himself, he only felt that it was white and flat, and there was nothing wrong with it. But now Li Yunxin's words poked in and poked through the snow surface. He really saw that there was a ravine under the snow. It was a ravine of desire. A ravine that was difficult to fill but covered up by his own subconscious. Now that he saw it, it was hard to ignore it. Chapter 635. This feeling made Dong Haijun frown. You. What's wrong with you? How do you know you? Li Yunxin raised his hand and gently pressed down, as if to suppress Dong Haijun's emotional turmoil. Dong Haijun, it's not your fault, but all of us demons. His voice was calm, but just like the look in his eyes, it also contained some kind of soul-stirring power. We fiendish demons are born with a kind of instinct. This instinct is the pursuit of power and power. This was an instinct in fate. No one could escape from it. Those who want to escape will either die or be destroyed. So you said you don't want more power, but you mean it. Li Yunxin looked at him. Think about it. And in the end, except for the pursuit of power, everything else will become fleeting clouds. Dong Haijun didn't know what he was going to say, but he knew that if he continued to listen, something bad might happen. However, Li Yunxin's words caught his heart. The instinct and destiny that Li Yunxin mentioned made him curious. This curiosity scared him. Why was he so interested in the enemy's words? He hesitated for a while. Finally he said, "What do you mean?" Li Yunxin put his hands behind his back and was silent for a while. Then he said, "Sometimes when I'm bored, I play a game with myself. I give myself a specific person or group. Then I ask myself to think about the meaning of their existence and what they pursue. I used to like to think about mortals like this, to figure out their minds and simulate their lives. It can make my mind more flexible, and it can also kill my time. Then one time, I changed the target to a demon. I thought I would get the same result as other people. For example, this person was born poor, so he may have some desire for wealth and power. Or although born poor, he was severely hurt by power, so he tried to escape it all his life. Or if born noble, in the end, he may get tired of fighting and want to be a rich man. There are many people on the land, and the world of people is very exciting, and there are many things. So in my mind, there are several trajectories and routes for each person's life. Some of them may be extreme opposites. Until I think of demons like this. I tried one after another, thought one after another. In the end I realized that the final path of life of the demons is actually the same. Li Yunxin paused for a moment. He seemed to be lost in his own thoughts. Then he shook his head lightly. In the end they will all die in battle. The final goal of the fiendish demons is to pursue power and authority. There is no other way out. Lord Donghai did not understand what he was trying to say. He frowned in confusion. Aren't people like this? I don't see any difference. Li Yunxin laughed again. It's hard for you to understand now. In that case, I'll make it simpler. Many people constitute a society. In human society, wealth and power are unfairly distributed. There are many classes. Living in human society, no matter what social class one is born into, one will have all kinds of pursuits and choices. The poor seek to eat their fill and wear warm clothes. A well-off family pursued wealth and dignity. The nobles seek greater power. These things can be said to be survival needs, safety needs, dignity needs, and so on. Even the emperors of the human world, with the most wealth and power, still have needs. They may seek longevity. There are too many things and choices in the human world. Therefore, there are too many things that people want but can't get. In a lifetime, what you can see and get is only a small part of it. No matter how wonderful your life is, there will be regrets at the end. Li Yunxin sighed. Therefore, there will be some people who realize this, realize that there are so many needs and choices, and one person can't do it all. Therefore, they know that if they don't want to fall into blind pain, they must make choices. Therefore, some people claim to yearn for a plain life. But this kind of yearning is not what they really want. It's just a kind of compromise to not get what they want, so that they won't feel more pain. On the other hand, in essence, it's also because of their own incompetence. The human world is a huge ocean, an ocean composed of many desires and choices. Everyone is struggling in this ocean. No individual has the strength to float to the surface and transcend this ocean of desires. But demons are different. The difference between demons and humans is greater than you and I can imagine. Li Yunxin pointed to himself. And then to Dong Haijun, demons are the kind of huge society without humans. Although there are many demons on land and on the sea, there are not so many that there are people. The difference between each demon is so great that we can't form a stable social relationship like humans. Therefore, in the world of demons, our desires and choices are naturally much less than that of humans. What's worse, because of the demon's innate magical powers, these choices and desires are even fewer. At this point, Dong Haijun was slowly absorbed in his words. If he said these words to other big demons, they would probably turn around and walk away. He didn't know what he was talking about. But this Dong Haijun was very interested in the people on land and the world of humans. However, although he was interested, he only knew a little about it. Now that Li Yunxin had suddenly started talking about the nature of human society and the nature of demons, it was like a martial arts fanatic who had wholeheartedly pursued martial arts suddenly received a profound mental cultivation method. Naturally, he would be overjoyed. Because of this ecstasy, Li Yunxin's long speech was not boring to him, but very interesting. He listened more and more attentively. He heard Li Yunxin continue. When I was a human, I also liked to eat. There are not many ingredients for delicious food in the human world. There are many things in the world, but humans can only eat a small part of them. So, in order to pursue a good taste, I made a fuss about this small part. What methods can make ingredients crispy? What methods can make ingredients tender? People enjoy talking about these changes. They say it's the science of food. I used to think so too. Then I became a demon. One night, I was drinking with someone. When I was drinking, I roasted a few small stones over the fire. When it was hot, I threw it into my mouth. Li Yunxin smiled. Crispy. It was far better than any ingredient or method of cooking when I was a human. At that time, I suddenly realized, so that's how it is. So that's the limit of humans. They don't live in the ocean. Instead, it's an aquarium filled with desires and choices. Everything is trapped in the aquarium. And they struggle to make more choices under limited conditions. But if it's like me, only food, what can't I eat now? If it's crispy, I eat stones. Humans can't eat them. If it's hot, I drink lava. That kind of taste can't be made either. The world is vast, and everything has become my ingredient. This was just one of the examples. If we talk about other things such as gorgeous clothes, the emperor of the human world wears gorgeous clothes, and it takes hundreds of embroidery workers several years to do it. This kind of thing is not easy to get, and ordinary people can't wear it. Since they can't get it, they will yearn for it. And there will be other choices. But what about demons? The robes you and I wear are transformed from demon power. If I want to, I can change into hundreds of appearances every day. Those needs of humans, laughable needs, we don't have to spend much effort to satisfy them. We have plenty of time, a long time and power far beyond ordinary people. So we can do things that they can't imagine. Nowadays, I don't like these things very much. The only thing that makes me reluctant to part with them is not them, but the experience of being a human in the past. But I know that one day, maybe after hundreds or thousands of years, I will slowly tire of this experience. At that time, nothing can satisfy me. Li Yunxin's tone slowly became cold. I'm strong. I'm tired of delicious food, gorgeous clothes, and even tired of the love between men and women. In the end, I stripped away all the desires that can be easily satisfied, leaving only myself. Then there's only one thing left for me to pursue. Absolute freedom. The prerequisite for this absolute freedom is to have absolute power and authority. Humans don't have such extravagant hopes. But demons can. Demons can and may be able to do it. This is the ultimate instinct and destiny of demons. Lord Donghai. So think about it. Do you want to have this kind of absolute freedom? The last sentence was like a sharp arrow, suddenly shooting into the heart of the Donghai Dragon King. It was as if he had suddenly woken up from a dream. He was stunned at first, then took a step back and stared. You, what is this? But Li Yunxin still looked straight at him. Do you want it? You'll tire of love sooner or later. But you'll never tire of power. You're now the Donghai Dragon King. But you have to worship Shinryu. Your power comes from her. She can bestow it, and she can take it back. You're afraid of me, afraid of the Lord Tong Tian. Because of this insecurity, you have the power to rule the Donghai, but you don't have the power to decide your own fate. You don't have absolute freedom. If you want it, you have to take the first step. Li Yunxin lowered his voice. Lord Donghai, I can help you unify the sea. I can also do what I did before, make you so strong that Shinryu can't do anything to you. These things are easy for me to do. So the question is, do you dare to take it? Lord Donghai stared at Li Yunxin with widened eyes and asked the question he had already asked tonight. What are you going to do? Li Yunxin laughed. I want to help you kill the other 8 Dragon King. Chapter 636. It was like a spell. Before, when the Lord of the East Sea heard him say that he would help him become stronger, he was just surprised. Why does he want to do this? What is his purpose? But now, after hearing this sentence, the focus of his surprise shifted. If it were someone else, any profound realm demon who said this in front of him, he wouldn't have such a reaction. But now, it was Li Yunxin who said it. Through a few short contacts and confrontations, the Dragon King of the East Sea already knew that this person was very difficult to deal with, and also very capable. Even from the perspective of the enemy, since he said this, maybe he could do it? However, this Dragon King of the Sea, compared to the demons, might have a shortcoming. That was the lack of confidence and inferiority brought about by his early birth. He used to be a small demon, but now he was the Dragon King. From the bottom to the top, he didn't walk step by step, but reached the sky in a single bound. This caused those two feelings to linger in his heart. But in fact, it was hard to say whether these 2 points were shortcomings. For example, they made him not as arrogant and conceited as the ordinary demons, or even the cultivators of the profound sect. He looked more like a person. He would doubt himself, be weak and lack of confidence. This also made him have the highest level of vigilance for every word that Li Yunxin said, for fear that he would fall into a trap. Therefore, after hearing this sentence, the Dragon King of the East Sea didn't laugh arrogantly, nor did he really think about killing the other 8 Dragon Kings. He looked warily about him, as if to see if anyone had overheard. Then he took a step back to draw a line with what Li Yunxin said. I didn't hear a word you said. I won't do this. You people on the land fight each other, but it's not the same in the sea. We are under the rule of the Divine Lord. Li Yunxin waved his hand and laughed. Don't lie to yourself. You are really a hermit. What did you do in the beginning? Dragon King? No one is really content with a plain life. Either you are powerless against the whole world, or you don't know what you really want. Lord Donghai, you belong to the latter group. I see you know something about the land, but not in great detail. Now I will tell you all about it. You may listen as much as you like. If you don't want to listen, then turn around and leave immediately. He waited for a while. Lord Donghai frowned. Of course I don't want to hear it. But if he left now, wouldn't he be lowering the prestige of the Eastern Seas Water Tribe? Go ahead, and I'll refute you one by one. Li Yunxin smiled. That's more like it. With this attitude, we might be able to take another step forward. Then listen to me. In the past, Shinryu subdued the demons, defeated the Rock King, and infected the Dragon Sun on land, so that the Dragon Sun can lead her to deter the demons and rule the world. At that time, people were unstable. Many demons even thought that the Rock King might make a comeback. That was why the Shinryu needed a group of people, not a single person like her. Further back, the Dragon Sun slowly built up their own forces and established their roots on the continent. Shinryu would not be able to easily move them. On the contrary, I'm afraid that these Dragon Suns will feel threatened and band together, making it even harder to separate them. That's why I became Dragon Sun, the Wei River Kuan. It was probably because of this that Shinryu liked to see someone who was close to him interfere with his plans. So I took advantage of the situation and did many things at the foot of the Cloud Mountain. I killed 1 or 2 Dragon Sun, and finally won Shinryu's favor. This kind of thing is the same in the East Sea. Donghai King. Li Yunqing paused and looked at him. To be honest, you're one of the least annoying demons I've ever met. With your temperament, you probably treat your subordinates quite well. And they must love you very much. Well, think of it. Shinryu doesn't like the Dragon Sun's growing power on the continent. But does he like the Dragon King's growing power on the sea? Is your power gradually stabilizing? If Shinryu wants your life now, will your subordinates be happy? Or will they disobey? Even if only a small part of them? Donghai King frowned. The expression on his face changed slightly. Li Yunqing was happy to see this change. He shook his head gently. You know the answer yourself. What will happen? You can also imagine what will happen on the continent and Punglai as a lesson. But this temperament of yours is both a strength and a weakness. It prevents you from being arrogant, so you lived in peace for 1,000 years. But it also makes you lose the courage to think about what to do in the future. Let me guess what you're planning to do now. Did you originally plan to take me and Lord Tongtian down, or even kill us? Do you think that Shinryu asked us to come to the East Sea without telling you in advance, so that you can test us and fight against each other? Do you think that if you kill us, you will win, and continue to be favored by Shinryu, and continue to be the Dragon King of the East Sea? Li Yunqing was very calm when he said these words. It was as if he was repeating what Donghai King had just said. But these words were like thunder to Donghai King's ears. His expression changed dramatically. You, who told you this? Li Yunqing smiled bitterly. Do I need anyone to tell me this? It's just the most common trick on the land. People like you must think so. Donghai King frowned. So what if I think so? Do you think I can't beat you? Li Yunqing shook his head helplessly. I've said so much, and you've listened, so what if you can't win? If you really kill me and Lord Tongtian, do you think this is over? Can you really be the Dragon King for another 1,000 years? In Shinryu's place, she will realize that you are indeed very capable, powerful enough to kill us. When you grow into such a threat, won't she want to get rid of you even more? At most, you can buy yourself another 100 or 200 years. When Shinryu finds a better candidate, there will be another Li Yunqing and Lord Tongtian. At that time, will you continue to kill? This is like a rising tide. One day the dam will collapse. Donghai King's brows were almost twisted into a crease. The idea that Li Yunqing said was actually taught to him by Huang Guanzi. Now that Li Yunqing saw through it and laughed at it for being childish, he didn't know who to believe. He had never been a decisive person, and liked to think carefully before making a decision. Therefore, in this situation, he was very much like Su Yusong and Zhuomuja, who had just left Mount Yunshan. He was silent for a while, and his voice became low. Then, why did Shinryu ask you to come to East Sea? If you have the ability to pass through here, won't you be a bigger threat than me? Li Yunqing laughed. Donghai King began to ask himself. This meant that he was slowly starting to catch up with his own thoughts. This big tortoise was finally slowly poking its head out of its shell. Of course I'm a bigger threat than you. Li Yunqing spread his hands. I've done so many things on the land. Do I need you to prove my threat? Do you still not understand why Shinryu asked me to pass through East Sea, but refused to tell me how to get to Dragon Island? Why don't you think about why I met Lady Punglai? Did I really meet her by chance, or did Shinryu ask me to meet her by chance? Dong Haiking slowly opened his eyes wide. You mean? Li Yunxin looked at the Lord of the Eastern Sea with a kind of creepy calmness. I don't know if you are clear about one thing, but if you are one of the people on the land who know me well, you should be ready to run when you find me in the Eastern Sea. In general, my ability is to destroy wherever I go. So you're right. The threat you're worried about is already here. Your 1,000 years as the Dragon King of East Sea is up. Shinryu must have asked me to come and destroy you. Dong Haiking stared at Li Yunxin. Arrogant. You. He became a little angry, but this anger was mixed with something else. Li Yunxin was happy to see this kind of anger, so he smiled calmly. A year ago, I was still a man who had barely reached the transcendent realm. But a month ago I set the Cloud Mountain on fire. Now I've become the dragon son of the mysterious realm, standing in your water prison. Separated by the saint's treasure I took from the profound gate. You can't do anything to me, and you have to listen to my long speech. So Dong Haiking, yes. Li Yunxin stopped smiling. Me? The Dragon King of East Sea and the Dragon King of Wei River stared at each other for a while in the dark and deep sea. After 2 breaths, Dong Haiking looked away first. You, what do you want? The big turtle finally stretched his limbs. No, he threw away his shell. Right now, Li Yunxin could do whatever she wanted to him, leaving an indelible mark on his body and heart. You and I are in a similar situation. Li Yunxin stared at him, his eyes like a viper about to strike. When I was in the Cloud Mountain, Shinryu should have used me up. After using me up, I grew too fast, so it was time for me to die. She asked me to come to East Sea. I will make trouble and fight the 9 of you. Whether I can get rid of you, or I will be killed by you, or both of us will suffer great losses. It will be the result that she will be happy to see. So this is your doomsday, and it is also my doomsday. You and I have to save ourselves. Dong Haiking was silent and hesitant. He seemed to know that he shouldn't ask some questions, and that if he asked, he would fall into Li Yunxin's trap. But he had to say it. Finally, he said in a low voice, How can I save myself? It's the same thing I did before. Take advantage of the situation and seize the opportunity. Li Yunxin said without hesitation. Now you are at a node. Once this point is over, there will never be a second chance. This is your only chance to save yourself. What is it? Tell me. Li Yunxin waved her hand. Don't be impatient. I want to ask you first, do you know the Golden Rock King? Chapter 637. Dong Haikuan hesitated. I know a little. This was what Huang Guanzi told him. Not much, but enough. Li Yunxin sighed in a low voice. That makes things easier. When I was in Dongting is the core of the big circle that seals King Rock. There is the key to unlocking the dragon soul. King Rock's adopted daughter came to take the dragon soul, but Shinryu didn't care. I felt strange at that time, and I couldn't understand it. Later I understood what was going on. Shinryu wanted to take action against Dragon Sun. When King Rock was first sealed, Dragon Sun guarded the land and helped Shinryu. But now, the Dragon Sons were so powerful that they had become a source of trouble. If King Rock comes back to life and conflicts with Dragon Sun, it can help Shinryu eliminate the disaster. Dong Haikuan frowned and wanted to say something. Li Yunxin raised his hand and interrupted him. I know what you are going to say, but I have a guess. I'm guessing that something happened 1,000 years ago that caused the true dragon's power to decrease greatly. So they killed Goddess Penglai and replaced her with you. Did you notice anything unusual at that time? Dong Haikuan was stunned. Then he said, I don't know. But Li Yunxin had already captured a fleeting strange look on his face, as if he didn't feel anything at first. But now that Li Yunxin reminded him, he remembered something. He didn't ask. He smiled. Then it's a matter of course. If you were replaced, your foundation and power would be unstable. Naturally, you can't be disloyal. So now, the seal of King Rock is about to be lifted. What should Shinryu do when its strength is greatly reduced? Go to the land and seal King Rock again? Maybe it will be exposed. There are still many Dragon Sun on the land. So let's just give up the land. King Rock's real body is golden rock, and he doesn't like the sea. Midland is just a small piece of the sea. Shinryu has been operating on Dragon Island for so long. You take care of the land, and I take care of the sea. It's no big deal. Then let's ignore the land and clean up the sea. I guarantee that after the appearance of the Rock King and the decline of Shinryu's authority, you dragon son of the sea will not have any dangerous thoughts. Everything had to be done quickly. We have to finish it before King Rock breaks the seal. Li Yunxin sighed. The true dragon is scheming and has a great plan. Unfortunately, there are always accidents. And now this accident has occurred. As Lord Donghai listened to Li Yunxin's story, his heart was in turmoil. He still didn't know whether Li Yunxin was telling the truth or not. But when it came to himself, he couldn't find any flaws. He didn't want to believe it, but his rationality told him to. Once upon a time he had thought himself clever. But after meeting Huang Guanzi, who came from the land, he felt that Lu Ke was indeed more scheming and more knowledgeable than he was. But he still didn't have a deep impression of him. Until today, when he met Li Yunxin. She listened to his words, listened to his reasoning, listened to his stratagems. He finally realized, some of the things that Wei River Lord said were things that he couldn't understand. If he didn't say it today, he would never have thought of it. The East Sea that he thought was peaceful and stable. So there was such a terrible undercurrent and murderous intent hidden under the sea? The waves in his heart were monstrous. But on the other side of the waves, there was a deep abyss. The East Sea Dragon King felt a deep sense of loss. He, at least in this aspect, he really couldn't compare to Li Yunxin. Was this how they fought on land? Or should it be the same on the sea? But he wasn't a qualified schemer. At this thought, another terrible thought came to his mind. Or was it just him? The other 8 Dragon Kings actually. He was stunned and looked at Li Yunxin. Then, Li Yunxin nodded with a solemn expression. Yes, Lord Donghai. You don't have much time. The other 8 Dragon Kings may not have thought of this. Once they think of it, you may become one of the other 8 I mentioned today. He guessed his mind again. But Lord Donghai was no longer surprised by the other's terrible ability. He only felt fear. He thought of Huang Guanzi again. That person was from the Freemasonry. There were many people in the Freemasonry. Maybe there was a Huang Guanzi by the other Dragon King's side now. Just like this Li Yunxin. If I refuse you, Lord Donghai took a deep breath. Then you. I still have 8 choices. One of them will be willing to cooperate with me. Li Yunxin said calmly. So Lord Donghai, do you want to leave now? Or do you want to listen to me? What is that opportunity? The great demon of the East Sea shook his head slowly, and then again in a daze. But he spat out 2 words, say it. Li Yunxin nodded. The opportunity is, I guess the Rock King has appeared. Lord Donghai was stunned. Li Yunxin whispered. I have a friend who is the adopted daughter of the Golden Rock King. She should have come to the East Sea with me. But she suddenly left halfway, saying that she had something urgent to do. She is not the kind of person who will treat anything as urgent. Since she said so, there can only be one thing. The Rock King has appeared. This is a piece of news. Another one. The Rock King once wanted to marry my friend to Dragon Son. This means that the Rock King wants to make friends with the Dragon Son on land. Our Lord Shinryu is astute, and wants to ask the Rock King to clean up Dragon Son. The Rock King is not a stupid person. He wants to make use of Dragon Son. Lord Donghai, as a demon king on land, wants to make friends with Dragon Son. What do you think he wants? Li Yunxin paused, so that Lord Donghai could digest and understand his words, and his face gradually showed a more shocked and uneasy look. You think of it. The Rock King will not be satisfied with the land. Or rather, he used to be. But since he was sealed by Shinryu, he will definitely want revenge. Our divine lord's every move is good. But the bad thing is that King Ping woke up too early. The mess was not cleaned up. And the other party may have used it. The opportunity one I'm talking about is now. If the true dragon learns of this, he definitely won't touch you, nor will he touch me. We can live in peace for a while. Until the problem between her and the Rock King is solved. But after that, the ending that should have come will still come. However, Li Yunxin stared at him. If we take this opportunity to kill the other 8, we'll be able to kill them all. We can concentrate their power on you and become a superpower that is stronger than today. When Shinryu wants to destroy your power, they find that the Rock King has appeared. Can you guess at that time? Will she cooperate with you or continue to light a fire in the backyard? Lord Donghai, this is the opportunity. Not only can you be the master of the East Sea, but you can also control the ocean with Shinryu. Your life, your fate, can finally be decided by yourself. If you manage it well, maybe you can really get absolute power and freedom. The Dragon King of the East Sea stood there for a long time. The light in his eyes changed, as if there were countless thoughts in an instant. But after a long time, he forced himself to calm down. But what do you want? What can you get by doing this? Li Yunxin shook his head gently and smiled desolately. Me? I don't want anything. What I want you demons will not understand. But you only need to know that it will not conflict with what I can give you. This was not a perfect answer. But this kind of answer made Donghai feel more relieved. No one would use this method to find an excuse for themselves. He looked at Li Yunxin suspiciously. Then he looked at the 9th young master at the bottom of the water prison. I can't. You can't make a decision now. Li Yunxin smiled. Even if you make a decision now, I won't believe it. You are just surprised because of what I said, and your mind is numb. So you should go back and think about what I said. Or ask your advisors, or the people around you. Combine everyone's opinions and finally ask yourself, do you want absolute freedom? After that, you can make a decision. But you have to remember, your time is limited. The news of the Rock King's appearance may be known by Shinryu at any time. At that time, once she finds out that we are up to no good, she will not let us fight on the sea. She will calm down all disputes. Donghai frowned even more. The last doubts in his heart were about to dissipate, although there was still a voice in the deepest part of his mind shouting desperately, "Don't believe him." Finally he said in a low voice, "Okay." But before that, he did not finish his sentence. But as he expected, and just like the few times he was interrupted before, this Lord of Wei River understood what he meant. Li Yunxin snapped his fingers and said without hesitation, "9th young master, let's go." As soon as he finished, his figure suddenly turned into a stream of light and went straight into the full moon. No one knew what he did, but Lord Tongtian, who was showing off with the 12 prisoners at the bottom of the water prison, was also turned into a golden light and went into the full moon. Then the light in the water prison disappeared. The whole seabed became dim again, and one could hardly see their own fingers. Only Donghai Jun stood quietly in the water, speechless for a long time. Compared to what Li Yunxin said, what surprised him more was this person. He had never seen or thought that there would be such a person. He was terrifyingly bewitching and infectious. Donghai Jun did not doubt that he used some kind of magical power. But he also had some kind of fascinating charm. He did not hesitate at all, and immediately left the water prison, giving up the passage to the Dragon Island. Only the most confident person would do this, right? Because many things were too easy for him to get. He did not feel bad when he gave them up. He sighed in the deep sea and blew a series of bubbles. At first, he felt lucky that Li Yunxin found him first. He did not want to be enemies with such a person. If Lady Minghua was not here. Chapter 638. Madame Minghua. Madame Minghua. Madame Minghua's real name was Shang Guanyu. She came to the East Sea a year ago, and was now in the palace in the east of Penglai Island. The Lord of the East Sea used a powerful force to seal the palace, so that she couldn't come out. This force was also part of the enchantment of Penglai Island. The entire Mount Penglai was actually a fortress. Although there were no city walls or blockhouses, there were countless terrible murderous intents hidden in the faint fog outside. Since she was trapped, she seemed to know the power of the restriction. So she temporarily calmed down, and didn't do anything extreme. However, the Lord of the East Sea knew that once there was a chance, Madame Minghua would definitely escape. He couldn't allow that to happen. So the Dragon King of the East Sea, who was now in the bamboo courtyard where Huang Guanzi was staying, sighed. I understand what you said. I was also tempted by what Li Yunxin said. But for Madame Minghua, I can't do that. He had selectively told Huang Guanzi what Li Yunxin had said. Although neither of the two people in the courtyard could compare with the Lord of the Wei River in terms of wisdom. After all, one person couldn't think of anything. It was better to have one more person to help. Huang Guanzi wasn't surprised by Li Yunxin's arrival. He even said, I knew he would do this. Before today, the Lord of the East Sea would praise him with sincerity, and then ask him, why do you think so? But now, after seeing that person's glib tongue, he felt that Huang Guanzi had become slow in speaking. There was no way for him to poke his heart with every word. When he was talking to Li Yunxin, his emotions were fluctuating wildly. In just half an hour, it seemed like a long talk for a whole day. That kind of tension and excitement was something he had never experienced before. It was a brainstorm, but now the storm had subsided, and the sky was clear after the rain. Listening to Huang Guanzi's words, he felt like it was drizzling on the sea. His heart was itching, but he couldn't reach it. Uncomfortable, he was slightly absent-minded. When he came back to himself, he saw Huang Guanzi stroking his beard and looking at him. Lord of the East Sea, so what exactly is it? She had already asked twice. The Dragon King of the Eastern Seaside. You don't know what Madame Mingyue is here for. She was supposed to meet Shinryu. Huang Guanzi was stunned. Huh, she didn't go into details. I couldn't get anything out of him. Lord Donghai paced around irritably. He only said it was for Li Yunxin. I can't tell you the details, but I know that if she really went to see Shinryu she would die. She couldn't be persuaded. A woman like her wasn't someone who could be persuaded. I had no choice but to imprison her. Huang Guanzi's hand that was twirling his beard paused. He accidentally pulled out another one. But he didn't put it away this time, as if he was thinking hard about Lord Donghai's words and couldn't care about anything else. After 2 breaths of time he slowly said, Lord, you've only said this much, I can't think of anything else. Lord Donghai sighed inwardly. His consciousness drifted away again. He thought that if Li Yunxin was here, and he said this much, maybe Li Yunxin would have some way to understand? Or maybe he would smile and say something that would make the best of both worlds. Unfortunately, it was Huang Guanzi here. Alas, now he knew why the Freemasonry was at a disadvantage. So he waved his hand and frowned. You don't have to ask. If there was a way, I wouldn't be so worried. I know what kind of person Madame Mingyue is. I also know what she's going to do. This year, the year you've been here, every time I hear news from you about the land or about Li Yunxin, I tell her, she doesn't look good. I'm also scared when I see it. She will die because of Li Yunxin. Lord Donghai frowned. Letting her out will ruin things. If I don't want her to die, Li Yunxin will die. Do you understand? His words came out of nowhere. It would be strange if anyone could understand him. But it was probably the after-effect of talking with Li Yunxin just now. At that time, Li Yunxin guessed his thoughts halfway through. Now that this feeling had not faded, he continued to say the same thing. Unfortunately, Huang Guanzi was not Li Yunxin. Lord Donghai saw his puzzled look and became more and more annoyed. He simply waved his hand. Forget it. I know what to do. Your Freemasonry also wants Li Yunxin to die. Then, let's agree with him for the time being. How about we deceive him slowly and then kill him? Huang Guanzi was still stunned. Lord Donghai's thoughts were jumping like flying fish on the surface of the sea. He made such an important decision, but there was no sign of deliberation. It was as if he was angry with someone. What was wrong with him? All he could say was, Lord of the Eastern Sea, please reconsider. If what you said is true, that Lady Mingyue wants to do something for Li Yunxin. If you kill him now, won't she hate you for the rest of her life? Why don't you cooperate sincerely with Li Yunxin, and the 3 of you discuss it in detail? Lord Donghai stopped because of his words. Huang Guanzi was a little happy. Just as he was about to continue, Lord Donghai suddenly became furious. What do you know? A gust of demonic wind suddenly rose from the flat ground, causing the surrounding bamboo forest to make whistling sounds. Lord Donghai stared at Huang Guanzi with wide eyes. She said that Shinryu wants to kill Li Yunxin. I used to think that she was confused, but after hearing what Li Yunxin said today, I know it's true. She was going to Dragon Island to assassinate Shinryu Immortal. This was the first time that Lord Donghai lost his temper with the Freemasonry counselor. But his anger disappeared as quickly as it had come. After shouting for a while and glaring at Huang Guanzi, he turned his head away and sighed. Alas, sir, alas, I really... Huang Guanzi let out a light breath and coughed. Don't be angry, my lord. But, even so, if you really get Li Yunxin's help and become the only dragon king in the ocean, you can compete with Shinryu Immortal. Then protecting Li Yunxin will be a piece of cake. At that time, Lady Mingyue won't need to find trouble with Shinryu Immortal anymore. And she will even remember you. Isn't that the best of both worlds? What else do you have to worry about, my lord? Lord Donghai seemed to be more frustrated and impatient. He stopped pacing. Instead, he sat down on the stone bench and sighed. You don't know the inside story. You don't know the inside story. I won't do what Li Yunxin said. Sir, please don't mention this kind of thing again. After all, you are a member of the Freemasonry, and you also want Li Yunxin. There is no reason to speak up for him. Sir, if you really want to help me, please help me think of a way to capture Li Yunxin and take him away quickly. Huang Guanzi was silent. He stared at him with interest for a while and sighed with him. Forget it. I am here to help Lord Donghai. There is no reason to teach him how to do things. My lord, if you insist, let me ask you something first. How far can Junshan go? Get along with your 8 brothers, kill a few of them, and leave you alone. What can you do? Lord Donghai frowned. As long as you are not hurt or angered. As long as you do not betray me, I can do it. Huang Guanzi smiled knowingly. Okay, then let's do it step by step, adapt to the situation. Lord Donghai, listen to me first. While Lord Donghai and Huang Guanzi were discussing, Li Yunxin and the 9th young master had returned to the ship. At this time, they could already see a faint shadow at the junction of the sea and the sky. That was the chain of the East Sea. Some people were let off the ship, and the miraculous things that happened along the way were widely spread. The rest of the people were going to continue to Aquarius Bay, but in fact at this time, many of those sailors should want to get off the ship there. Things like sea monsters, cultivators, and the Dragon King. Standing on solid land and listening to others talk about them, they might construct fantastic and magnificent pictures in their minds. But if they really experienced it like they did a few days ago, they would realize how insignificant the lives of mortals were in the face of magical powers. They were not even part of the background. Not to mention, when Li Yunxin and the 9th young master returned to the ship and walked out of the bright moon, the Lord Tongtian cheered and jumped in the cabin because of the joy of success. The whole ship immediately groaned. If Li Yunxin hadn't stopped him in time, this ship might have followed in the footsteps of the Haizong. The 9th young master felt a little wronged, but it was soon diluted by joy. This experience was indeed something to be proud of. He went deep into the enemy's lair alone, and talked with confidence and composure in the face of a mysterious realm monster. In the end, he cooperated with Li Yunxin to finish everything, and escaped unscathed. His only regret was that he couldn't bring back the 12 followers who looked up to him with great respect. Because of this joy, he asked Li Yunxin as soon as he stood still. How was it? How is it? How did my business go? When Li Yunxin returned to the ship, he immediately took out the painting that sealed Lord Donghai's doppelganger from his sleeve. He spread it out in the void, and looked at it carefully with a slight frown. After a while, a pen appeared in his hand, and he started to draw on it. Hearing the 9th young master's question, he didn't turn his head but smiled. Of course it went well. If it wasn't for you, I don't know how much trouble I would have to go through. The 9th young master was overjoyed. With his hands clasped behind his back, he triumphantly circled the cabin and returned to his original place. So are we really going to help that Lord Donghai? After saying this, he frowned. I don't like that person very much. He looks stupid. But if we really want to help him, we have to ask him to give me the 12 people. Yes, give me the 12 people first. Li Yunxin was silent. But the 9th young master was still talking about other things. For example, how many soldiers he should bring if they worked together. He should give the 12 people the title of generals. What kind of robe and what kind of palace he wanted. He He was talking happily, as if there were banners waving on the sea and several armies waiting for him to lead. However, Li Yunqin added a few more strokes to the painting and added many details that he observed from the Lord Donghai's real body. Then he turned to look at him. The ninth young master. He will not cooperate with us sincerely. The ninth young master immediately shouted. Then kill. He reacted. He was stunned and widened his eyes. Ah, why? How do you know? Because of some reasons that I know, but he doesn't think I know. Li Yunqin said. Those reasons are my guesses. When I was in Yunshan, I saw some clues and made a bold guess. This time I went to see him, also to confirm it. Now I think I guessed correctly. He paused and looked at the vast ocean outside the window. The Lord Donghai may be able to kill the other 8 dragon son, but he will never betray Shinryu. The ninth young master blinked in confusion. But you, he sighed halfway and found a chair to sit down. Okay, you always make sense. I can't be the commander of the navy. Li Yunqin saw him like this and laughed again. Why not? Isn't it the same on land? Although the two of them are cooperating, they both have their own plans. They are just waiting for the job to be done. The bait I gave him was delicious, and he had to swallow it. Before killing the other 8 dragon king of the sea, you can be the commander of the navy. But I am thinking about what to do after the job is done. The ninth young master was stunned for a while and said, You are really scary. Li Yunqin laughed. Those who are not scary are already dead. The ninth young master looked at him and frowned. He hesitated for a while. This time you won't harm me, right? After a while. Why would I? Li Yunqin said with a smile. I won't. Ninth young master nodded and heaved a sigh of relief. Then he became happy again. What should we do next? Li Yunqin blinked and lowered his voice. We have found the dragon king of the sea. Next, we should talk to the Lord Shinryu. The ninth young master was shocked. He almost jumped out of his chair and widened his eyes. Look for the Shinryu? Didn't you say you couldn't find her? Didn't we get out of the water prison? If we want to go to the Dragon Island to see the Shinryu, we have to go through the 3 islands and the water prison. But to see the Shinryu, I have talked to the Lord Donghai, so the Shinryu should know about it. If I talk to her now, she will show up. Ninth young master, guess what? I am actually working for the Shinryu now. Li Yunqin said with a smile. I am not lying when I said that the Shinryu wants to kill the dragon son of the sea. Do you still remember what you felt after I reconstructed your body on Mount Umbra? Have you ever thought about why the Shinryu would show up at the foot of Mount Umbra and want us to go to the Dragon Island? The ninth young master frowned. Mount Umbra? That aura, is it the Shinryu? Yes. Li Yunqin's expression turned solemn. In fact, before this, when I made your Dharmakaya for you, before you woke up and before I left the Cloud Mountain, the real dragon had already appeared before me. It's strange. When I was in the Wei River, the Shinryu showed up to see me. After I reconstructed your body, she also showed up to see you. It seems that she is very interested in this method. It was also at that time that she gave me a task, and also promised me something. Li Yunqin was silent for a while. We are not going to kill 8. We are going to kill 9. The only dragon king on the surface of the sea is not the Lord Donghai. You should be the one to do it. The Lord Donghai swallowed my bait, and became the bait to lure the other 8 dragon king into the trap. That you're tuning in to the Li Mei's Sword of Destiny YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.